I call this meeting to order. Ms. Tanner, can you please take the roll?
Yes, Basine,
Here.
Sampson,
Here.
Clanton,
Present.
Gabriel,
Present.
Jordan,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Martin.
Here. Okay, can I get a motion to go into closed session, please?
Move to go into closed session.
Second. Seconded by Dr. Gabriel? Yes.
No.
Who's Dr.
I
Gabriel?
forgot the IT person's name, but he was supposed to bring me a laptop.
Matter of fact, he's getting ready to do it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, you said Gabriel?
Yes. Ms. Tanner, please read the motion.
Move that members of the school board go into a closed session for the purposes which are set out in subsection A of section 2.2-3711 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as amended for discussion or consideration of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific officers, appointees, or employees of the Norfolk Public Schools pursuant to subsection 1 of the above cited code section. The subject of this portion of the session is the discussion of today's regular personnel agenda. And B, discussion or consideration of disciplinary and any other matters concerning students in Norfolk Public Schools that would involve the disclosure of information contained in the scholastic record pursuant to subsection 2 of the Act. The subject of this portion of the session is the discussion of today's regular student support services agenda. And C, consultation with legal counsel and briefing by staff members concerning actual or probable litigation or specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by counsel pursuant to subsections 7 and 8 of the Act. The subjects of this section of the motion are the two set out in subsections A and B above in handling student disciplinary hearings during the pandemic under the governor's orders, the board's resolution, and the Act. Basine?
Aye.
Sampson?
Aye.
Clanton?
Aye.
Gabriel?
Aye.
Jordan?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye. All right, can I get a motion to come out of closed session?
I move that we come out of closed session.
Dr. Gabriel, can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, Ms. Smith seconded.
A resolution certifying an executive meeting of the school board of the city of Norfolk in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. Whereas the school board of the city of Norfolk has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the school board of the city of Norfolk that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore it be resolved that the school board of the city of Norfolk hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the executive meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the executive meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the school board of the city of Norfolk. Basine?
Aye.
Sampson?
Aye.
Clanton?
Abstain.
Gabriel?
Aye.
Jordan?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye. Okay, so what's going to happen now is we'll recess until our business meeting at 7 o'clock, which will reconvene in our boardroom. And I'd like to call this meeting to order. Ms. Tanner, please call the roll.
Yes. Basine? Campson?
Here.
Clanton?
Present.
Gabriel?
Present.
Jordan?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
And Martin?
Here. Okay, thank you. We're all here. All right, so welcome everyone. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Welcome to our March 17th Norfolk Public School Board Business Meeting. We have a really exciting agenda before us today and some really important decisions to make as always. So Ms. Tanner, will you please call the roll?
We can do it one more time.
Yeah.
Basim?
I'm sorry, did we do that already?
Yeah.
I'm a little blanked out. Okay. All right. Well, let me just say, welcome back to all of our staff and our elementary school students and the students that are part of the first phase of our transition to back to the classroom. We're really excited about all of the work that went into this and how well the first few days have gone so far. And I know our kids are really excited to get back to see their teachers. We have B group starting tomorrow and Friday. And so I'm just want to say thank you to everyone who made this happen. This is a new momentous moment for our school district and for our community. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to, will Ms. Simpson be leading us in the pledge, or
Ms. Burns.
Ms. Burns? Ms. Burns, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Good evening, Madam Chair Dr. Martin, Vice Chair Jordan, Superintendent Dr. Sharon Birdsong, board members, and our viewers. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burrs. Okay, next up we have our student musical performance. Dr. Birdsong, would you like to introduce our guest?
Yes. Good evening, Madam Chair Martin, Vice Chairman Jordan, members of the board, and members of our community. This evening, we have a wonderful musical presentation by Ariana Greggs, who is a student at Norview High School.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Briggs, for playing for us. Can you please share with us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been playing the violin, and give us a little background on why you selected that piece of music? Sharon with us.
Good evening, Ms. Roby here. I think he was trying to log in. We had a little bit of a challenge with the new format.
Okay.
But I just wanted to give a shout out to Ariana Gregg. She is an NPS student. She started playing when she was, in our elementary program, attended AOIS Rosemont, and played in the Norview High Orchestra. And she's currently enrolled at Governor's School and a member of the National Orchestra. So we're most grateful that she submitted her beautiful performance, and I'm sure you'll be hearing a lot more about her and from her in the future. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And thank you for the opportunity to while we're in this hybrid situation, to still grace us with all of these wonderful student performers. And we're definitely excited to have this, remain as part of our meeting, but also to follow them along. So we'd love to have her back in person whenever that's possible. So, and Ms. Roby, thank you so much for all that you're doing to mentor these children. It's really a privilege to have such talent in our schools.
We appreciate being part of this. Thank you all for your support. Have a wonderful evening.
You too. Okay. Next, we have our superintendent's report. I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Birdsong.
Good evening again, Madam Chair Martin, Vice Chairman Jordan, members of the board, and members of our community. I appreciate the opportunity to share some updates with you this evening. First and foremost, I would like to recognize that our first group of students have successfully returned to in-person instruction this week after not being in our schools 1 year since the mandated closure of schools. We also had the pleasure of hosting Governor Northam, Secretary Carney, State Superintendent Lane, as well as several of our legislators and elected officials for a visit at Southside STEM Academy at Campus Stella on Monday to commemorate our first day of reopening. It was indeed a wonderful sight to see all of our brilliant students who were so excited to return to their school. As you are aware, a lot of hard work and effort went into preparing for the reopening of our schools this week. I would like to take a moment to give you a brief snapshot of the support offered from various departments and offices within the school division. The Division of Academic Affairs has continued to ensure that we can provide meaningful and positive learning experiences for all students, whether virtual or in person. The Department of Curriculum and Instruction has recreated third quarter enhanced pacing guides to ensure teachers have time to welcome back students and to create time for needed social emotional learning opportunities. Learning materials were purchased and distributed to schools in preparations for students returning in phase one, particularly in our self-contained programs for our students with disabilities who are returning 4 days a week. These materials are intended to support instruction, strengthen mitigation amongst our most vulnerable students, and to ease their transition back into the classroom. The Office of Professional Development, in collaboration with our ITRT, have provided extensive professional development opportunities for teachers and administrators related to concurrent teaching practices. These sessions have ranged from overall best practices to subject-specific sessions. In preparation for the reopening, additional equipment, training, and specialized PPE needs have been addressed by the CTE department as staff considered each career cluster and pathway with restructured processes and procedures for the safety of our students and staff. We've also discussed how hard our information technology team has worked to ensure that the necessary technology resources were widely available and that our network infrastructure could sustain virtual learning for our students throughout this time. Some of these technology resources include web cameras and Bluetooth headsets for our teachers, headsets and Chromebook protective cases for our students, and charging stations and USB hubs for the classroom. Members of the IT team diligently work to reinforce and enhance the internet and Wi-Fi connectivity in all buildings to boost bandwidth in preparation for concurrent learning. Most recently, this team has also conducted professional development sessions on concurrent learning with teachers and administrators and created a concurrent instructional learning module in Canvas that's available to all teachers as a resource for additional professional development and collaboration. Our school leadership teams were also hard at work preparing their buildings for a warm welcome for our first group of students this week. In addition to decorations and displaying positive messages on their marquees, information was disseminated to families about the concurrent and hybrid learning models for students assigned to both houses A and B. Reopening guides were also drafted and reviewed for both elementary and secondary schools to outline best practices and expectations for learning in person. Our operations team has been busy in making sure that our buildings and buses were ready to safely receive students this week. All of our buses in all 51 of our school buildings are sanitized, organized, and marked for appropriate social distancing in accordance with CDC guidelines. The Here Comes the Bus app is preparing to launch for parents and guardians to download information on their child's bus stop locations and pickup times in alignment with the designated hybrid days that they will attend school. The staff of School Nutrition Services has now implemented a bit of a hybrid service of their own as they began providing meals in schools this week for returning students, while also continuing to serve healthy and nutritious grab-and-go meals at 20 sites. The Division of Communications and Community Engagement continues to provide updates to our staff and families as decisions are finalized and pertinent information for returning in person becomes available. The CCE team has created a new webpage that we're excited about to house all the important information related to the updated plan for returning to in-person instruction, as well as operations. Reminders are also being shared via weekly social media and the division's mass notification system. The WNPS-TV 47 team recently produced a video to highlight healthy best practices and key health mitigation strategies for students and staff to be mindful as they return to our buildings. They have also filmed videos to support professional development needs for concurrent as well as hybrid instruction. And last but not least, we could not do any of this without proper staffing. So our human resources team has been in overdrive, working to ensure that they are able to actively recruit and retain the best for Norfolk Public Schools, despite the challenges being faced by the COVID-19 pandemic. Since March of 2020, members of the HR team have hosted 6 internal job fairs and have attended 25 external job fairs. Additional internal job fairs are planned, and the team will be attending 17 external virtual fairs before the end of April. These efforts have allowed us to significantly reduce our classroom teacher vacancies. Upon reaching the final decision for returning to in-person learning, the Department of Human Resources collaborated with the CCE team to develop and disseminate updated COVID-19 guidance and protocols for our staff. This information outlined key mitigation strategies for working in buildings, along with response and reporting protocols. So as you can see, no stone was left unturned when it came to planning and preparing for our students and staff to return in person. Our teams have put forth tremendous efforts to make all of this happen. Once again, I would like to thank our administrators, teachers, staff, students, and families for continuing to adapt during this time. Your feedback and support are relied upon as we continue on this journey. This administration remains committed to making informed decisions and will continue to monitor health conditions while following key health mitigation strategies and guidance received from our public health officials. We're all in this together. So again, your grace and flexibility are greatly appreciated as we focus our efforts on achieving educational excellence for all students in closing out the school year. And now we'll switch gears to the superintendent's video report for tonight. I'm pleased to introduce this video that captures some of the updates that I just mentioned, as well as some of the great things taking place in our schools. We begin the video with a look at a visit from our state and local elected officials on Monday at the Southside STEM Academy at Campus Stella. Then we move on to a feature of Norview High School student Ariana Gregg, whom you've already had the pleasure of seeing this evening. Then we'll take a look back at the wonderful accomplishments that our school nutrition team has under their belt since they jumped into action on the onset of this pandemic. And finally, you'll get a behind the scenes look at the professional development sessions that were hosted to assist with guiding teachers on how to best facilitate concurrent instruction. So without further ado, let's play the video.
On the very first day students returned to in-person instruction, Southside STEM Academy at Camp Estella welcomed several city and state officials, including Virginia Governor Ralph Northam. Following a brief ceremony, guests were invited to take a tour of the building to see how the first day of school was going.
It's a lot of energy. It's great. It feels great. It's been a long year during the pandemic, but gradually see students come back. It feels really great. It's been a really long time. Our kids have really sacrificed during the pandemic. They're really resilient, but we really need to start getting them back gradually so they can get accustomed to this the remainder of the academic year and really hit the ground running when the next academic year starts.
It's been a long year, and Norfolk has done a great job managing the pandemic. But we know that student mental health, student academic success is being challenged because of the way that we've had to instruct our students. So what today means for me is this is the chance for us to really get in with our students, make sure that we're growing them, and build upon those experiences so that we can get back to as close to normal as we can after vaccines and everything else. And today's a big day in Norfolk.
Today is really very special. We have been out of school for a year. And so welcoming our children back after a year, it is really emotional. We know that many in our community, they've suffered. And so we're so glad to have them back in person. And we're working with their families. We will continue to work with our children and their specific needs. But we are so very happy about seeing their smiling faces today.
Norview High School senior Ariana Greggs was recently named to the National Youth Orchestra, which means she'll get the chance to play the violin at Carnegie Hall in New York this summer.
I was really surprised because I initially wanted to audition just for fun because I was getting ready for college auditions and I needed something to calm me down and something just extra to play along the side. So I initially just applied for fun, and when I got in I was super shocked and I was super excited.
Of course I was really excited because she worked so hard to get to this point, and I think this is such a high point, but it's only one point. She's going to continue to blossom and to have opportunities such as this particular opportunity, but I wasn't surprised. She's always put in the work.
I started on viola actually when I was in 6th grade, and I played viola until 8th grade, and then 8th grade I actually played violin. So I've been playing a stringed instrument for about 6 years, but I've been playing violin for about 4. I like that it's split into 2 sections in the orchestra, and there's a lot of places you can take violin, whether it's being the support or actually playing the actual melodies.
I first officially met Ariana in September of 2017. She was a freshman. It was also my first year here, so we were kind of learning things together. And the first time that we played together was when I noticed that she had something special. So when we all play together, they're all freshmen, they're nervous, and I could literally pick her sound out of a group of about 25 students. Her tone was just so mature. Typically when you enter high school, you have to work on tone and making a beautiful sound, and she kind of already had that.
It's kind of overwhelming because I just assumed that everyone's at the same level and things like that. But it took me a while to really understand that not everybody's in the same place as I am, and so that kind of makes me feel better because if someone else is hearing the kind of sound I'm producing, that means I can help other people also achieve that sound.
If she's asked to learn a piece of music, she's going to immediately go home, she's going to work on it, and she's going to work really hard until it is the best that she can produce. So she's always had a really hard work ethic. I think it's grown even more now that she's playing higher level music, really collegiate level music at this point. So she works really hard.
After high school, I would like to go to a 4-year college and pursue a degree in music performance. And I'd also, like, during or after college, I would like to be placed in a professional orchestra or teach private lessons while being in the orchestra.
She's ready. She's already performing music at the collegiate level. So as long as she keeps up that work ethic and she continues to be positive and optimistic and passionate about making music, the violin is a difficult instrument. So as long as she sticks with it, she's going to do a great job. She's going to do a great job.
As the school year has rolled along virtually, our school nutrition department has maintained their high standards of service and innovation. During the pandemic, they have served over 2 million grab-and-go meals to our students and were recognized for this accomplishment by the Department of Education. Not surprisingly, their reward comes from elsewhere.
Well, the recognition comes from seeing the customers enjoying the meals. I mean, it's always nice to be recognized by the Department of Education. Mainly, the gratification comes from the reward of seeing the people come to pick up the meals, in particular the children. Schools have provided a safe, reliable source of food for children the entire time, and I think for some of them it's actually a destination as opposed to just a meal.
Despite the pandemic, school nutrition has continued to observe various events, including this month's National School Breakfast Week, with new food items and celebrations at schools. In addition, they've maintained a valuable partnership with the food bank, which provides food that students can take home, and they have a new partnership with Feast Virginia that offers recipes designed to educate families about eating healthier. Newer innovations to the department include an on-site hydroponics farm that currently provides fresh microgreens for salads, and a food truck, which is the result of a No Kid Hungry grant.
We were approved for $200,000 grant, and the first thing that we have found would benefit our community is a food truck. So we have started, the procurement is done, and we are in the final stages. We expect it to be delivered the middle of May.
We'll be able to bring it out during our summer programs. We can use it for promotional activities. We'll be able to bring it out to food deserts right now. There's a few of them in Norfolk, so that will be able to expand the food programs to those areas.
As students return to school buildings, those essential employees in school kitchens will be relied upon more than ever.
Staff is going to have to pivot, as they have many times, because we will be serving in-person learners from the moment they arrive to school all the way through the school day, and then we still have to be on hand in many locations to serve the virtual learners at the end of the instructional day. So they're looking at a longer day, they're looking at some changes to their schedule, but really everyone is very excited for the return to students to school.
Throughout this pandemic, those working in school kitchens with empty cafeterias, who have handed out more than 2 million meals, have persevered and discovered the great rewards of serving their communities.
It's an awesome thing, I tell you. We worked hard, all of us, in the nutrition center, in the kitchens. The delivery guys, we all doing great. But the best thing about it is we're feeding the kids. We meet the kids, we're feeding the kids, and we help the parents. That's awesome.
They come and tell us that that we benefit them. They're thankful, and they appreciate us being here. So it's very, very rewarding. I enjoy the fact that we're helping people. It's helping us too. You know, it's good to be able to give and help others.
Prior to the return of students to classrooms, NPS provided several online workshops to help teachers adapt to teaching students in a classroom and virtually at the same time. These courses, which were taught by instructional technology resource teachers, simulated this new teaching environment and showed them how technology can be used to help them teach concurrently.
We're doing our first experimentation of really modeling a concurrent instruction and sharing just different tools that could be used for teachers and trying to alleviate some of the fear. We realize it's just very stressful for teachers as we come back to in-person learning with the hopes that each teacher will have their own method that they fall into. There's not a one-size-fits-all for this to work, but hoping that teachers will start to adventure and play around with it.
She's right now using the Logitech web cameras that we purchased for every single teacher in the division, and she's also using a Jabra headset. So it's a small Bluetooth headset that does Bluetooth as well as connects directly into the USB port, so then she can be mobile. So she can hear students that are online while walking around the classroom and not having to be right there in front to listen.
Although many teachers were apprehensive at first, many of them started to become more comfortable with the process and were able to provide valuable feedback.
It really gave me great perspective of what it's like for my classroom teachers who have to handle what students will be doing inside the classroom and virtually through the computer. There was a lot of great feedback, a lot of great questioning, some advice from teachers all throughout the chat. Teachers were really engaged throughout the entire Zoom session, and we actually had over 200 participants in our very first session, so that was fantastic.
The host muted me. I didn't mute myself. But again, I think it's truly remarkable, thinking about all that we've been able to accomplish this year. And again, I want to thank my hardworking administrators, teachers, and staff for all that they have done to prepare for Monday to receive our children for in-person instruction. So, Madam Chair Martin, Vice Chairman Jordan, and members of the board, that concludes my remarks for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Birdsong. I've got to say, I don't know if you caught the t-shirt that one of the nutritional workers was wearing that says, "We don't stop." And that is definitely the motto for NPS this year. We don't stop. And who doesn't love a food truck? Like that's exciting news. I just love how, getting out into the communities and really meeting that need through a food truck. It's going to be really fun. So I'm looking forward to that as well. So thank you for thinking creatively and also very practically as well. It's really exciting. So next on our list, we have the school board clerk's report. Ms. Tanner, can you go ahead?
Yes, just one moment. Okay, good evening, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, board members, Dr. Birdsong. Our school board recognitions for tonight to close out the month of March. We have one proclamation for National School Social Work Month requested by Ann Burney, the lead school social worker, with the theme Beacon of Hope, School Social Workers Lighting the Way. And our proclamation acknowledges how school districts and local educational agencies should continue to work with school social workers to address students' social, emotional, physical, mental health, and environmental needs so that students may achieve academic success. And a special thank you to our school social workers this month. And then also next month, for the month of April, we recognize School Library Month, National Student Leadership Week, that is April 18th through the 24th, Public Schools Volunteer Week, that's April 19th through the 23rd, and Administrative Professionals Week, that is the 19th through the 23rd, and Administrative Professionals Day is April 21st. And this concludes my recognitions for this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Tanner. Okay, so item 3.07 and 3.08 would our public citizens comments. We'll start with citizens comment on the agenda items only, and then we will hear citizens comments on non-agenda items. And so this is another one of those milestones as we transition back to in-person meetings. We have been accepting our citizens comments in written form and posting them for public viewing on our board docs website where we post our meeting information. And so, this is a kind of, it's really, I'm really excited to be able to hear our citizens live once again. So, Ms. Tanner, how many speakers do we have for tonight's citizen comments?
Okay.
On the agenda items.
Okay, for the citizen comments on agenda items, we have 2 speakers, and for non-agenda items, we have 1 speaker. Okay. For tonight's public comment, speakers have 3 minutes to provide public comments. A timer will alarm to signal the conclusion of your remarks. Madam Chair, our first speaker for today is Helen Pryor, followed by Philip Hawkins Jr.
Ms. Tanner, will you be setting the timer?
She ready?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, Helen. You may begin.
Tanner. Good evening. Good evening, School Board Chair Dr. Martin, Vice Chair Mr. Jordan, members of the Norfolk Public Schools School Board, Superintendent Birdsong, and the Norfolk Public Schools Administrative Team. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak to you this evening. I am Helen Pryor. I'm a proud member and board member of the local union, as well as Vice President-elect of the Education Association of Norfolk. I've been working with Norfolk Public Schools since 2007, my entire career at Ruffner Middle, and I am presently an English teacher and the English department chair there. I'd like to thank you again for taking all of our concerns into consideration at the March 3rd public meeting on the proposed budget, and also for all the opportunities many of you have taken as a group and individually to work with us in collaboration in addressing not only the needs of our teachers and our staff, our parents and our children, but our whole community, our home here in Norfolk. We're taking many steps towards this COVID-19 recovery, and we are looking inwards. And after reviewing the proposed budget, I do want to let you know that I am very much in support of it. I feel it is very positive. I believe all the issues have been addressed. I do have one concern, and my concern has been the phasing in. There's been a lot of positive comments made in regards to it. I'm still concerned that there are a lot of cases still going on out there. We have many members that have not had their first COVID shot, let alone their second one. So I have a real concern about being part of a full workforce when I return to NPS. My school has not been phased in completely yet. I do appreciate all the comprehensive PD everyone has been given, not only on concurrent instruction, but as well as the in-depth instruction on the policies and procedures to make sure that we are all adhering to the protocols. So if we could just revisit some of that, that would be wonderful. I want to thank you once again. I appreciate all the measures that have been taken since day one of this crisis. You've all been very transparent. You've all been very supportive. And I do want to take this opportunity again to thank you for everything that you do each and every day for us. It is noticed and it is appreciated, and it really should be stated more often. As Dr. Birdsong said, we are all in this together. Thank you again. Have an excellent evening.
Okay, Ms. Tanner.
Yes, Mr. Philip Hawkins Jr. is next.
Is Mr. Hawkins on the Zoom?
We're in transition. We're transitioning him in.
Okay.
He's in. Go ahead, Mr. Hawkins, please.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Tanner. Good evening, School Board Chair Dr. Martin, Vice Chair Mr. Jordan, members of the Norfolk School Board, Superintendent Dr. Birdsong, and the NPS administrative team. My name is Philip Hawkins Jr., and I am a pre-K4 early childhood elementary education teacher and the grade level chair at the PB Young Senior Elementary School. And I'm also a lifelong resident of Norfolk and a proud graduate of Norfolk Public Schools of Norview High School. I am also a proud member and leader. Recently, again, noted that I was elected as the president-elect of the Education Association Norfolk for the incoming year. And also, we're affiliated with the Virginia Education Association at the state level, and at the national level, the National Education Association. I'm also a proud member of the Norfolk Public Schools Educational Planning and School Facilities Steering Committee. Tonight, I'm here to speak as an individual about the proposed fiscal year 2022 budget for the Norfolk Public Schools. I would like to again thank Superintendent Dr. Birdsong the MPS budget team, and the administrative leadership team for having courage to present a budget 2 weeks ago that addresses many of our school division's fiscal priorities that focus on the needs for staff, students, their families, and our facilities, both pre-COVID, during our current COVID transitions, and also for post-COVID operations in 2021 and 2022. I would also like to thank each member of the Norfolk School Board for serving and for your attention to listening to the citizens and the stakeholders of Norfolk Public Schools 2 weeks ago and again tonight. The needs in the community and the strict adherence to the health and safety while providing high-level quality instruction must continue to be at the forefront of this district's budget priorities for our schools. So tonight I am asking the school board to unanimously adopt this proposed budget that will then go to the Norfolk City Council and the Norfolk City Manager for review for approval. So again, some of the highlights of this budget would be to make sure that we continue to support funding, adequate school ventilation, HVAC systems in all schools, in all classrooms. And I want to thank at this point, at this time, those administrators and leaders who have been in my classroom. My classroom does have a concern going on right now, but they have been focusing on fixing the problem. And so I look forward to that being resolved within the next few days. Thank you so much. Also, funding for PPE and replenishment for all schools and classroom and staff and students. Funding for plumbing needs. And I want to thank you because PB Young did receive some new sinks, I think in the last 2 weeks. So we want to thank you for that, but also making sure all schools are adequately supported. So thank you for this opportunity. And I look forward to continue to advocate alongside you as we go to the next level with the Norfolk City Council in the weeks and days to come. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you for your comment. Ms. Tanner, who do we have on our non-agenda items?
Our next speaker for non-agenda items only is Patrice Smallwood, and she's joining us on audio.
Okay,
so we're going to transition her in.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Could you speak up more, please?
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
I'm getting some nods. Yes, go ahead.
Great. Well, my name is Patrice Smallwood. I'm a leader in the Norfolk chapter of Virginia Organizing, and I also serve on the ministerial staff at New Macedonia Christian United Church of Christ in the Bruce's Park community in Norfolk. So to the chair, vice chair, and members of the school board, as well as our superintendent, I first want to start by commending you all for your efforts in addressing many of the concerns surrounding the reopening of our schools. Like you, it is my desire to make sure our students, teachers, and staff move into in-person learning with high regard to their safety and their welfare. However, there's still just a few concerns that I had and wanted to address, and I hope that you all would take into consideration. First, I hope there will be some additional consideration given to the task force that has been assigned for school reopenings. And particularly exactly how this task force will be monitoring the status of each of the schools as the school year progresses and as time progresses. And the second piece is with regard to our teachers cleaning and sanitizing. I realize that the goal is to have the teachers take on that responsibility of cleaning and sanitizing in between each of the classrooms, but I have not heard or seen if there will be additional time allotted in between classes for teachers to do so. If that time in between courses or classes is only for cleaning and sanitizing, I believe it could become problematic as there wouldn't be time for teachers to de-stress, to have one-on-ones with students, or even just to prepare for the next class. And so these are just a few of the concerns that I wanted to bring to the school board and to the administration as we continue with in-person learning. Again, I am most grateful for the school board and superintendent for all the work that you have done thus far, and I hope you will continue taking these and other concerns into consideration. Thank you for your time.
And Dr. Martin, this concludes our speakers for this evening.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Tanner. Okay, moving on to item 3.09, approval of the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel, and seconded by Mr. Clanton. Any discussion? Okay, Ms. Tanner, please call the roll.
Aye.
Aye.
Clanton.
Aye.
Gabriel.
Aye.
Jordan.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye. Okay. The consent agenda is passed. All right, moving on to our decision and discussion agenda. We have item 5.01, our monthly financial report, be presented by Mr. Jenkins. Don't know why I missed that.
Good morning, or I should say good evening, excuse me. Good evening, Chairwoman Martin, Vice Chairman Jordan, Dr. Birdsong, and members of the school board. I'll briefly review the February financial reports with you. You see those in your package. During the first 7 months of the year, I think Ms. Tanner is displaying the next page, please. During the first 7 months of the year, we collected $195.6 million of general fund revenue. This was 58% of the $337 million operating budget. For the same 7 months, we collected 61% in fiscal 20 and also in fiscal 2019. So we're down just a little bit. On page 3 of the highlights, we see that revenue and spending to date. During the first 7 months, we spent or encumbered $191.4 million. This was 56.8% of the budget. Again, the revenue was $195.6 million. During the previous 2 years, spending for the first 7 months was 60.8% in fiscal 20 and 58.5% in fiscal 19. So again, our spending is a little behind the previous years. On page 4, we have 2 graphs. The first is revenue at the top and spending or encumbrances at the bottom. And this is by month. The current year data is displayed only through February with red columns. Monthly comparisons for the previous 2 years are shown for the entire 12 months in blue and orange. An estimate of monthly payments is displayed in the green background. Please note that there is one error in the second graph for February. The graph indicates annual commitments of $17.4 million. It should be 26.7. The encumbrances were inadvertently excluded. More detailed information on the status of the fiscal 2021 general fund budget is available starting on page 5. There's also a monthly report for child nutrition services on page 6. There were no budget transfers during the month of February that exceeded $50,000. And finally, next month's report for March will include a grant status report. That concludes my report for you, Dr. Martin. If you have any questions or other members do, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Any questions?
I have one, Dr. Martin. A question.
Okay.
So you all can hear me okay. Mr. Jenkins, on page 5, I think it's maybe just generally speaking, where you were showing that that we're currently a little behind past years as far as expenditures are concerned. Are you at a point where you can project whether or not we may have fund balances at the end of this fiscal year and in the ballpark in which they may be?
Mr. Jordan, we haven't made projections for exactly where we'll come up at the end of the year. We can see that spending is certainly behind the previous year, and we expect that will continue. There are some costs that we will be incurring that we haven't been. For instance, we just started school this week, so school buses are running and consuming fuel, and they'll need to be maintained at a different level than they were earlier in the year. So we expect some costs to rise with students returning to school. But our spending now is significantly behind previous years, and I suspect that will be the case when we finish at the end of June. But at this point, I don't have a projection for the end of the year. We are working on that now.
Just one follow-up. So I understand on the expenditure side, the transportation piece. Any thoughts on the instructional services piece? Why that delta is there?
Well, of course, as far as the instructional side of the house, spending has continued pretty close to the rate we would have expected. There are some areas where we did have savings, for instance, in daily substitutes, but instruction has continued remotely. So there haven't been the same degree of savings in that area as, for instance, in transportation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Unmute, Dr. Martin. Thanks.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the monthly financial reports for February.
Second. Seconded by Ms. Campson. Okay. Ms. Tanner, please call the question.
Basine?
Aye.
Campson?
Aye.
Clanton?
Aye.
Gabriel?
Aye.
Jordan?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye. Okay, the ayes pass. Back to. Sorry, I buried my agenda somewhere. Okay, here it is. Thank you. Okay, next we have 5.02 School Board's proposed budget for fiscal year 2022. I'd like to open it up for discussion. Are there any questions or comments? Mr. Clanton?
No, Madam Chair, just that we're in a formal business meeting, so we need to either have a motion on it, which my question is related to that because I see two resolutions that are attached here, one for the operating budget and then the other for the capital improvement budget. Are we voting on these separately or are we voting on these as a package?
I'm sorry, just a minute. You're echoing. Can you repeat that question?
I said on section 5.02, we have just school board proposed budget fiscal year 2022, but there's two resolutions in here. So are we voting on them as a package as one? Because the main budget does mention the capital improvement budget, but there's two resolutions.
We're planning to vote on the resolution separately.
Okay, so we're going to vote on them separately. But in fact, if we vote on the, okay. Well, with that, I move that we adopt the operating budget for fiscal year 2022.
I second.
Okay. Ms. Smith?
So I had the same concern as Mr. Clanton because the resolution, one of the resolution has both the operating and the CIP budget combined together. So if we were to approve that one, then we're approving, my thought is we're approving both and not the two separately. So I was a little confused.
That would be my thought as well.
Having trouble doing both.
Then what
Dr. Birdsong, go ahead.
Please unmute.
To restate what I said, I appreciate Ms. Smith's request for clarification. As I was working with Dr. Martin and Mr. Jordan regarding our meeting on Wednesday, and we had a follow-up conversation or conversations about making sure that the administration was ready for today. One of the reasons we decided to do a separate resolution for the CIP because we wanted to make it clear that based upon our conversation on Wednesday, or our post conversations, that we wanted to ensure that all board members were aware that we want to be able to provide you and the administration some flexibility with changing some of the projects, CIP projects, as we deem appropriate as we continue to engage in educational planning efforts. And so that was the primary reason for having that separate resolution. But in fact, as Mr. Jenkins has shared with the board previously, the CIP is a part of the operating budget. So I hope that helps to clarify.
Dr. Birdsong, if I could clarify, the capital budget is actually it's in a separate budget for the city. The operating budget is in the operating section, and then the capital is in the capital. If I could suggest, we understand the resolution for capital is in both. If it is the board's preference to have two different votes, then we will simply remove the capital piece from the operating resolution, if that is your desire.
That's our desire.
Thank you.
So then to clarify, on the resolution that we have before us that's titled Resolution to Adopt the Norfolk Public Schools Operating Budget for Fiscal Year 2022, we are going to strike through Capital Improvement Fund, including school buses, for $17 million. And we will vote on this particular resolution with that strike out, and then vote on the separate resolution separately.
If that is your preference.
Okay.
Well, as the maker of the motion, I'll take that friendly amendment. I said, as the maker of the motion, I'll accept that friendly amendment and to do two separate votes.
Yeah, I'd like to offer something else if you would consider with that. So I agree with Dr. Gabriel has suggested the whereas that has a March 12th, 2021, the second paragraph before we get to the budget proposal. I think that line would be taken out as well, since it references the operating budget to include a capital improvement budget.
I agree.
I'm really having, I know you're sitting right next to me. I'm having trouble hearing you, which.
Saying this line here.
So this is.
Would be removed as well, so that we can have the separation.
Okay, I see.
Whereas on March 12th, 2020.
March 12th, okay. So eliminate that as well. Does everyone understand what's happening?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Seeing nods around the room. Okay. So any more discussion on the resolutions?
No,
Yes.
I do have a question. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I think Ms. Bassine. Oh, yeah. So I just wanted, before we move, just wanted to see if I can get a question re-answered maybe. In the proposed, on the budget balancing side, the 15 teacher positions that are being recommended to, I guess we would, I guess through attrition would be eliminated. Do you have any additional insight on where those 15 teacher positions would be, or more specifics on either what buildings or what categories where those would be impacting?
Mr. Jordan, my understanding is that we will get specific projections for individual schools later in the year. And so it would be based on the projections of each school. The total student enrollment, or the projected enrollment across the entire district is down some, which is why there's a reduction of 15 teaching positions. But specifically what schools those positions would come from, I can't tell you that at this point.
So if I may, Dr. Martin, so can you explain when the, I guess the General Assembly approved budget that's before the governor, where the conversation was being held about holding school divisions harmless as it relates to enrollment. Does the opportunity exist to retain these 15 teacher positions and have them potentially available to support ongoing innovation around student learning and continuous learning as we move forward, and look at after we come after the following year, whether or not we should eliminate those positions versus doing it at this time?
Sure, the hold harmless provision would be the difference between our actual enrollment and the state's projection for our enrollment. And the state's projection for our enrollment shows that there would be a decline in the total enrollment for the coming year. So it's not hold harmless in the way that you and I may have conceived it, that any reduction in the student population from the pre-pandemic to the current period, we would be held harmless for. It is the difference between what the state projected our enrollment to be and what our actual enrollment was. And the state's projections are showing some decline, a natural decline from year to year that's independent of the pandemic.
Right. So I would just think that, and for the board and the administration to consider that, you know, in our efforts to continue to positively impact student outcomes, and in light of you know, where we are, you know, I recognize that we have CARES Act funding that'll be available to support various things, at least for a few years. I don't know if you all looked at any other potential budget balancing strategies that could take place that wouldn't necessarily impact teacher positions and by default students directly. Is there any other flexibility that could be considered around balancing the budget outside of the 15 teacher positions?
At this point, I can't say that I can. I will remind you that the General Assembly budget is different, and it is a bit more generous than the governor's proposal on which this budget was based. We've gotten information from the Department of Ed, and we would certainly come back to you next month. Their plan is to come back to you and let you know where we are. But at this point, I can't answer that question in the affirmative.
Okay, well, maybe if we can make a note for it when we come back in May and deal with our final budget after we see how things go through with the city and with the General Assembly. But thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Martin. Okay, I just wanted for clarity to Dr. Birdsong in relation to the question that Mr. Jordan was posed about the 15 positions. Definitely, I don't want to lose any teaching positions that are there, but based on the proposal that you submitted here to us for the board to make for consideration, are these cutting jobs, or is this through attrition that aren't positions that aren't filled currently?
This would not require the elimination. This would not require us having to rift any existing teacher in our school division.
Okay, but they're positions that we just don't have filled.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. And I agree with Mr. Jordan in the respect that we come back in May
Sure.
if there's a potential around there. But I didn't want, you know, sometimes people hear bits and pieces. We're not talking about rifting anybody or people losing their jobs.
No.
We're talking about positions that aren't currently filled at this moment. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Martin.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Two questions. One with the resolution, the operating resolution. Does the 349 million include the 6 million, nope, I'm sorry, 9 million SWIFT money.
No, that does not. That is
Okay.
actually in the
the
capital
capital.
improvement budget. So that's part of the 17 million that's in the capital budget.
So that takes me over to that one. So the 17,
Point of order, I don't want, we just need to stay on the operating, and if we can come back to CIP.
oh, come back to CIP?
Yeah,
Okay, that's fine.
okay.
Yeah, just for clarification, since we're voting on the CIP separately, then we'll discuss it at that time. Did you have anything else concerning the operation budget?
That was it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Basine, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. I too had questions about the 15 teachers, and to piggyback on something Mr. Jordan mentioned, or actually what you mentioned in terms of the state projections. In the state projections, did they account for the projected number of students that may return next year? And is there a way to accommodate, to reduce the number of teachers that we may lose here, and like maybe we retain some of those teachers with the expectation that some of those students will return, because we know that some of them will return, which is why they have the hold harmless provision. Do you know anything about how that projection was determined for next year?
I'm not overly familiar, but I can say that, let me make sure the mic's on. I can say that the projections are almost as though the pandemic has never taken place. Those projections assume that the natural, which has been a natural decline in the enrollment in Norfolk based on their demographics and past history. So those projections assume that we would return to a pre-pandemic state, that there would still be a reduction in the numbers vis-a-vis the preceding year had there not been a pandemic.
Okay.
But the expectation is that we'll have more students next year than we had this year, but it won't be at the level we were in fiscal 2020 last year.
Okay. Okay. And then my next question is for you or Dr. Birdsong. I know in the resolution, there's a revision to add a pre-K classroom. And so in the original budget proposal, as one of the budget balancing strategies was to eliminate a pre-K classroom. So this is just basically saying we're not eliminating, it's not really an addition, it's just now we're not eliminating that one pre-K classroom.
You're correct. There were two positions, a teacher and an assistant.
Right.
And we have adjusted their estimates for turnover and vacancies in order to account for the difference. So we're adding the position and the money to the expense side, and then we're also increasing our allowance for the savings due to attrition.
Okay. And during the conversation last Wednesday, which I thought we had a great conversation in reaching consensus about our attention and focus on pre-K. And so my question to my colleagues in the administration is, I recall us having that discussion also around the fund balance, about using some of that for, a marketing campaign to increase pre-K enrollment. And I don't know if we had a lot of good discussion that day, but I would like to see additional funds being put in place to enhance our pre-K and to put money behind marketing of pre-K programs in our district, so that we can recruit more children to NPS. And
I know Dr. Birdsong had spoken about increasing those efforts to market and to fill our pre-K classrooms. Is there? I'm not sure. When you say in addition, is it in addition to previously, or are you supporting Dr. Birdsong's presentation that she gave us about making concerted efforts to increase enrollment.
Well, I guess I'm trying to figure out, so we built consensus around it last week. So basically I'm saying where can I find that built into the budget that we're approving tonight? So is it just after all of that discussion, we're just adding that one pre-K classroom back into the budget?
That is my understanding. There was no follow-up discussion with me about using the fund balance for marketing purposes. I know that we currently have funding to support that.
Okay.
And in fact, Dr. Pohl and I have had follow-up conversations, and I'm not aware that additional funding is needed especially from the fund balance.
All right, well,
I think we have a good solid plan to move forward, and we're just as excited as you about building out that program.
Well, that I guess that answers my question, if we have the funds available to do that, and if we need to make sure that we're allocating it here to address that need. And then next, my question is around the 5 roving security officers and the data that supports the need for those officers. If you could speak to that a little bit. And one of the recommendations I would like to make is that instead of the 5 security officers that we add, when I looked at the budget allocation for those, I think we could do 3 school social workers or school psychologists instead of the security officers, unless you have evidence of the need for a security officer in the role and responsibility that position requires.
So can I ask a point, it's just for clarification? So the security officers are the SROs that we previously approved, or this is a different, okay.
No, this is different. The security officers are different, yeah.
Go ahead, Dr. Birdsong.
So last year, within our approved budget, before we had to go back because of major cuts, we approved officers for, I shouldn't say officers, we approved security support for our elementary schools because we had 0 security supports at the elementary level. So while we have different priorities at this time, instructional priorities, we need to recover from the pandemic. We're really putting a lot into our instructional program and infrastructure as it relates to technology, professional development, social emotional learning, and things of that nature. We do, however, recognize that there's still a need to provide that extra support at the elementary level. While we knew we could not ask for what we proposed last year, we want to take incremental steps into being able to provide that additional layer of support for our elementary schools, which is why we are proposing the 5 at this time.
Dr. Birdsong, I think the other part of her question was also around the social workers. Can you speak to, any impact that the security officers have on having or not having social workers?
So I've really not had time to evaluate that, so that put me on the spot about that.
But I didn't mean to do that.
But I will say that we have added a social worker position in the budget. And so we have looked at that. It's basically, it's hard to say one over the other. So we're trying to do the very best that we can to address as many needs as we can.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Basine, go ahead.
Yeah. So when I look at the allocations, and just so that you understand my thought process, when I look at the allocations, I see this constant over the last 10 years of the number of school social workers, psychologists that we've had, while other support positions have changed over time based on needs. So that's why I'm advocating for those positions. And yes, I see that we've added 1 social worker, but based even stemming from the conversation and discussion we had earlier today about the supports for our students early on that really are centered around restorative practices, harm reduction, and a supportive learning environment early on to reduce the need for security later on in their educational lifetime. Is really where I'm trying to get us to. So I just wanted to explain
Okay,
my thought on that.
thank you. Did you have something else?
I'll let Ms. Campson go.
Okay, I have, so I wasn't recognizing that there were hands up on the screen as well as in the room. So I have Ms. Campson, Dr. Gabriel, Mr. Jordan, and then Mr. Clanton.
I'd just like to point out to everyone that there should not be a battle between safety in the building and social worker support. One does not exclude the other, first of all. It should be, well, if we add safety and security personnel, then we don't have social workers, which we do continue to have. So I just want to make sure that we don't always put those in a head-to-head clash. They're both very, very important positions. We need social workers. We have no safety. We have no safety staff. I've spent a lifetime working as a teacher and an administrator in elementary schools as we go through this. So there's so many times that it would be so helpful to have some safety staff there. Just the simple things of monitoring the building to make sure no trespassers get in, to make sure that the building is locked from people trying to enter without being told they can from outside the building, to make sure that there are now at this point in time, PPEs. I mean, all of the safety equipment would be something that they could take care of. Also, this is a position that we scream to have when we talk about restorative justice and other types of discipline and settling of disagreements between students. We need someone in the buildings that can guide that discussion, that discussion and the support that they would give and the training to the teachers. I mean, that's when I look at that position, I look at it as something that works all around encompassing. This is not a discipline position. This is a position that allows training of teachers so that we give a better discipline program, a program that reflects restorative justice. So that's just something I want to emphasize. And we've never had it. And I can tell you, if you talk to the teachers and the administrators in those buildings, they want it. They want to make sure it's safe. And we say that our obligation is to ensure that every child in Norfolk can receive a high quality and safe environment. This is what this is the safe environment we're talking about. I think people are looking at it as a punitive kind of position, and it isn't. This is a supportive position to make sure that our children and our staff, our teachers stay safe. And it's not in conflict with social workers. We have social workers. We don't have security, safety staff in our elementary schools.
Thank you, Ms. Campson. Dr. Gabriel, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Martin. I will be voting in support of tonight's budget, the superintendent's proposed budget. This is a very powerful budget, and it's one of the best budgets that we've had in many years. I'm going to take you all back a couple years ago, and I'm looking at our budget book from 2018. Let's go back and look at positions that were cut from the budget, meaning people were fired. 34 classroom teacher positions, 25 of them in elementary school. 8.5 counselor positions, 7 media and media assistant positions, 13 resource positions, 9 gifted resource teachers. I think we tried to salvage some of them. 3 parent liaisons, 3 clerical, 1 custodian, 2 occupational therapists, 1 alternative teacher, and 1 clerical position. 2019 budget. We eliminated 15 teaching positions due to declining enrollment. There was no pandemic at that time. We also eliminated 6 preschool classes, 6 teachers, and 6 paraprofessionals. This budget is targeted. It's targeted at retaining our staff. It's targeted at identifying needs of students, both in achievement gaps and to excel students. We have finally addressed a significant issue that teachers have brought to our concern over and over again, and that is the compressed compensation. It is not the be-all, end-all quick fix. But for the first time, Dr. Birdsong has guaranteed that if we can hold harmless the compensation compression, she will guarantee to do that. And this budget is evidence of that. Our teachers are getting a step increase as well as a raise. as well as a raise. No teacher is being laid off in the midst of a pandemic. This is a budget that has had the input of teachers, principals, community members, and very good input, I believe, from our board. And I'm very happy to see how much we are so concerned about retaining positions that we yet don't have students for in classrooms. This is excellent. This is a great budget for us to rally around. And this isn't the last time that we're going to have to talk about this budget, because we have to send this to the city. And the city has to then determine how much money they can afford to give us, how much they want to value their education. And they have stepped up year after year. And I'm hopeful that they will do this again for us. But we're going to be coming right back here in less than a month to talk about these positions. So the door is still open for us. But let's remember where we have been and how far we have come. And let's move forward. I will be voting for this budget. Thank you, Dr. Birdsong.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. Mr. Jordan, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to piggyback off of where Dr. Gabriel left off, because we had some similar things there. One area where I do think that where Dr. Gabriel mentioned that I still think we can make some even greater progress, and that's around the equity piece as relates to our salary increases. I agree with Dr. Gabriel in the sense that the opportunity that we have before us in the proposed budget to deal with compensation. But I think we're missing an equity opportunity as it deals with the compression piece. So, we first went down this path of investing in the pay and comp study. One year we were able to change some of the compression because at one time we had, I think if you were in the first step, we had 4 years. If you were in the second step, you had 4 years. And so we invested in the process that allowed for that to change and allowed for us to have the 30-step scale, which addressed that piece of it. Then there was the focus and effort around trying to make sure that we had some uniformity, if you will, between steps. So one of the things that Mr. Jenkins and Dr. Birdsong talked about previously, and when you looked at the scale where they showed the example, one of the other things that we were able to achieve in that investment was having that 1.5–2% difference that's in between the steps, if I'm saying it correctly. But where we have the opportunity today and where we were saying we want to continue to build upon was actually to address the compression. And I don't think we're quite there yet. And I think we have the opportunity to make a greater leap. So I just wanted to encourage again that the board and administration consider even more targeted effort around the salary piece, and that is largely dealing with trying to reward and support our veteran teachers and staff who have been with Norfolk Public Schools through all those challenges. Right now, we still have significant amount of compression in those first 10 steps amongst teachers and many other categories. And I think that because of the funds that are coming from the state, because of the funding formula that we put in place to help provide more predictability, and because of where we are now, I think we have an opportunity, even if it's in a small way, to do greater equity for those staff persons who have been in that compression piece. Yes, everybody will get a step, but you can still stay compressed in that mode versus somebody who may have been 2 steps or 3 steps or 6 steps behind, being able to get the type of adjustment that they needed in order to be rewarded and be competitive. The other thing I just wanted to mention, we didn't do risks. We would be required by statute to actually execute a reduction in force if we were terminating people or laying people off. So I agree with you about the positions, but I think it was more about attrition. I don't recall us doing any risks. And then the last thing I just want to mention around the school board budget, I just want to make sure we do a correction around our governance training and that we properly put in the appropriate categories what the maximum value is of the training that we're doing with the Council of Great City Schools. And I also think we should consider, and I mentioned this the last couple of years, putting additional funds in the legal fee category so that we can have additional legal support as it deals with the potentials around collective bargaining or any other legal concerns we may have. But the main thing I just wanted to say, I agree. I think that the compensation is a good thing. I just think from an equity and opportunity perspective, we can do more if we stay committed to the 4th and 5th phases as we've talked about around the pay and comp study. And I think this proposal can do better in that regard. Not saying that what we have isn't good, but I think we can do better. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Compensation, additional resources for schools and students, safety and security, technology, infrastructure, and instructional supports, and building maintenance and repairs. These are all things that we've asked for. And I'd like to thank the administration and Dr. Birdsong for bringing us that. As you all know, this is probably our third go around for some of us, being on the board, that we can't get everything, and that what we are steadily making progress along the way. And just like Ms. Pryor mentioned from the Education Association, she hopes that we could have a unanimous consent on this budget tonight. This is just the first step, as we all know. We have to send a budget over to City Council. And what I'm asking at this particular point is not only letting there be a sign of unity amongst this board to send that as a one unified voice, but when that budget comes back, and then before it gets back here, that we actually encourage our parents and our teachers in our community to walk over to speak to council and to champion for full funding of our public schools. Last year at this time, we're looking at almost a $40 million shortfall potentially in tax revenue because of the beginning of this pandemic. We're in a totally different position at this point where we have additional resources. We haven't even talked about the federal funds that they're going to position this school division to really do some remarkable things. I agree with Mr. Jordan in the respect to the compression, that we have to keep our laser-like focus on that. However, I think that we have a solid budget at this particular point, and once we've identified what the funding levels will be from City Council, then we as a board will then have an opportunity to come back and to ensure whether or not we have to cut anything or to realign things, we can do that at this time. But to make sure that we meet our obligation of April 1st, I encourage my colleagues tonight to vote in favor of this budget and to work to encourage the community, our parents and others to champion with us as we work with our partners across it at 800, well, not 800, 810 Union Street to work with us to continue to be great champions for all public education. And so with that, I just encourage everyone to vote in support of this and as we begin to talk about our other proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clanton. Okay. Now I'm hearing myself very loudly in my ear. It's distracting me. Okay. So can I get a motion to accept the resolution?
It's already there. I've already accepted amendments. Call the question.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Didn't realize we'd vote. Okay. Ms.
You want to go and call the roll?
Yes, please. Sorry, I'm having difficulty here.
Okay. Basine? Campson?
Aye.
Clanton?
Aye.
Gabriel?
Aye.
Jordan?
Hey.
Smith?
No.
Martin?
Aye. Okay. Thank you. And next, we need a motion on the CIP budget.
Yeah. So Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we adopt the resolution to adopt the capital improvement plan budget for fiscal year 2022.
Second the motion.
Any discussion? Ms. Smith?
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Mr. Jenkins, what are the revenue sources for the 17 million that we're requesting?
Yes, Ms. Smith, you mentioned the SWIFT program. I believe the amount from the SWIFT program is $6 million. It deals with has to do with the property sale by the city of Norfolk.
Okay.
There's $3 million a year that is coming from the city. I believe most of that would be from debt that the city plans to issue. And then there's another $1 million that is coming for school buses.
That one's a carryover.
Right. So the city has told us that their plans were that we would have a total of 10.
Okay.
The amount that we have proposed is based on our consultant's recommendations of what we need to invest annually in order to maintain and address the deferred maintenance in our building. I would presume that that $7 million differential would be funded by the city in a similar manner that the $3 million that they have in their plan.
Okay.
In other words, debt.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So my other concern is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th paragraph down in the resolution where we say we would commit to allocating at least 16 million a year on maintenance projects. I have some concern with that statement, primarily because we don't really know what our revenue sources are going to be to set a hard number that we're going to commit to. The 16 million is what's recommended, but we can go above or below that. So I'm a little concerned about putting a hard, fast number in here that we're going to say annually, this is what we're going to designate, this is what we're going to commit to presenting for CIP.
Go ahead, Dr. Birdsong.
I appreciate that feedback, Ms. Smith. But again, the reason why we set at least 16, because we do believe that, again, as you clearly stated, our consultants have advised us that in order to address our needs, we need to request no fewer than 16 million per year. And it doesn't mean that this board won't decide to do more, but we think the board should decide to request at least that amount if we are to truly address the significant capital improvement and deferred maintenance needs that we have for this school division.
I think requesting the 16 million is a difference. There's a difference in allocating or designating 16 million and requesting the 16 million, because the end result of it anyway is what the city gives us or what we have that we want to commit to it, such as the fund balance or something like that. So when I read this, and my comprehension might be a little off, that we're committed to allocating it, saying that we're going to designate $16 million annually to CIP. I'm okay with requesting 16 million, but not allocating.
So you would like to change the word allocating to requesting. That would make it a little bit, that I can
That would make it a
understand.
little more palatable for me.
Yeah, I mean,
committed to request.
As the maker of the motion, I don't have an objection to changing the word from allocating to requesting.
Mr. Clinton, I saw your hand up. Did you have something else to add?
I was just saying that I didn't have an objection to changing that. And then once Ms. Smith finishes, I just wanted to speak to the resolution.
Ms. Smith, did you have any additional comments or questions?
No, no more.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Clinton. You have the floor.
Great, thank you. I think that Dr. Birdsong kind of almost captured it all there. City Council has consistently said to us and others that we need to ask for what we really need. And I believe that, you know, as we're going through our governance training, looking at our strategic plan and our educational planning as a whole, and our consultants have told us this, that we need no fewer than $16 million in order to get us where we need to go. And I think that sending a clear message through this resolution here that we have a commitment to at least asking for that amount as we continue along with our planning. It sends clear direction and a message to council that this is what we need. And then we just need to back it up with the necessary educational plans there. So again, like I did with the operating budget, I encourage my colleagues to support this. we've had $3 million for several years. We know that that's not even scratching the surface of what we really need. And I think that this really sends a strong message that we are committed to the physical facilities and maintenance and ensuring that we have healthy and safe learning environments for our students and our teachers. Thank you, Dr. Martin.
Mr. Jordan?
Yes. So thank you. I support the idea of the maintenance request. What I've shared with the board before, I think what we're missing here is a plan that is a multi-year plan. So what the consultants recommended around the 16 and 19 million, if you use the more updated numbers, dealing with deferred maintenance, it was just that piece of it. There are other recommendations that the consultant also included for the board to consider that looked at potential efficiencies around combining schools, new construction, renovation, and so forth. So I think what we really need is what we really need is where we were last year. The goal was by this time this year that we would have at least at that time, we were talking about a 5-year plan recommendation, so that when you send over a capital improvement plan, not only does it have references to the maintenance, but it also can give some indication around what we intend to do around other facilities, new construction, combining facilities, closing facilities. That's what you look at those 4 legs of the stool that's involved with the ed planning. So I guess as of last week, I was thinking that we thought we had the opportunity to not do this today and to go back and look at some of the recommendations coming out of the cooperative strategies so that we could integrate that. That was my thought. So you're not on mute. So what it is that I think is I think what we really need is a 5-year plan and not continue down the path of one year plan. So I support what's being said in terms of our needs. I think that's clearly been stated, but I think we need more than just deferred maintenance, and we need to be much more strategic in not only what we're asking for today, but giving the city council and the citizens a sense of how we intend to move forward with the strategic planning, with the ed planning, with the engagement of the community and the steering committee as part of that process. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. I agree with Mr. Jordan. We do need to have a 5-year strategic plan. Absolutely, it's way overdue. It's something we need to start working on right away. But as we're working on it and waiting to get to have it, we still need to start working on what we're doing for our children. And the buildings are deteriorating. They're not kept up. Some buildings are past trying to repair. It costs more to repair them than it's worth. Children in 21st century America should not be going to school in trailers. We have children in trailers with no restrooms on site. They have to go out into the weather to go to the restroom, to go to the cafeteria, to go to the gym, to go to the media center. And you can't and every time a child needs to go to the restaurant, can't stop instruction and take the whole class in so you can be sure those children are secure. They're out there by themselves. And it's a dangerous, dangerous situation. Makes me feel a little sick to my stomach every time I think about it. And what about on the days that are bitterly cold or it's pouring down rain and those children are out there? We can't keep waiting. So while we've got great training coming up, hopefully that's going to help us push ahead. Mr. Jordan's absolutely right. We need a 5-year plan. I'm amazed that we don't have one. I think it's a failing of the board that we don't have one already. But while we are getting it, we need to start the work, and we need to start the work for our children, for their safety, for their education. We need to start it now. No more trailers, no more leaking roofs, no more poor ventilation. Let's get to work and let's start it with this budget request. Thank you, Dr. Martin.
Thank you, Ms. Campson. Ms. Smith?
Thank you, Dr. Martin. I just was gonna say that Mr. Jordan is correct. That was the discussion that we had at the previous meeting last week about tabling this, the CIP, so that we could look at the entire plan because the consultant study does focus on more than just deferred maintenance. And there, I had the concern of conducting some of this maintenance, and then we turn around and do the educational planning piece of it, and we're performing maintenance on buildings that we now decide to consolidate because of the issue that we have with capacity. So I think that we need to look at this from a more holistic perspective before we begin to sink more money into deferred maintenance. Let's find out where our requirements really are, and then begin to put the money in there. As I said before, we have approximately $22.5 million in unassigned fund balance. We're already looking at potentially 15.5 million. We spent 15.5 million less this year than we have, we've spent 15.5 million less than planned this year, if I recall correctly what was said on that last slide. We spent 3/4 of a year away from the schoolhouse. So it stands to reason that our costs are much lower, or our expenses are much lower than what they were in the past. And we're going to see a significant fund balance for this school year than we saw for the 20 school year. It's just going to happen that way. Even with the budget, we only received of the city portion roughly 58% of the revenue that we're expected to receive, and we're at 75% of the year. So when we get the rest of the money, there's gonna be a significant excess. And we should take all of these resources and stop just sparsing it out on small things because we feel like we have to do it, and take a good look at the bigger picture, and then begin to direct the money, as someone said earlier, targeted to specific things that's going to give us the best return on our investment, that's going to maximize our resources to the fullest of what we have available to us.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Dr. Gabriel, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. I do appreciate the comments made by my colleagues tonight with regards to the capital improvement budget. And certainly I think that had we not had the pandemic, that we would have been much further along with our capital improvement plan. Truly, I do believe that. I'm fully committed to next year at this time, having it done and ready to present to the city. When I went back and looked through some of my papers, I looked at the cost of the 5 schools that we built recently, the elementary schools. What the original letter from the city to us put a price tag of $22.5 million on the elementary schools. We know that the Southside STEM Academy at Campus Stella was much more than that because it became a K-8 school, and we increased enrollment there. We wanted to increase space for seating. So that was, I want to say 2013, maybe 2014, when that letter came out. That was $22.5 million. As Ms. Campson said, we have needs right now. I'm looking at the needs that have been brought to our attention. A roof for Booker T. Washington High School. I can't tell you how many times I sat right behind us and I heard from the Booker T. Washington Alumni Association, teachers, the Booster Club, everybody, we need help with Booker T. A roof for Ocean Air, a roof for Ingleside, an HVAC for Jaycox, doors and windows for Calcott, Larimore. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you that these schools aren't on a plan for consolidation, but I have a pretty good idea with my experience on the board. I don't see any of these schools going anywhere anytime soon. And right now, what I do know is that the most pressing school that we have on our profile right now is Maury High School. And that's about $100 million price tag. That school, unfortunately, was not in our original feasibility study because we had a separate study going on for Maury. And so while I would definitely want to look at this comprehensively, I say let's give ourselves this year fully committed with our strategic planning partners that I know Dr. Birdsong is working with our governance training, and come back with a very good plan. Now, to Ms. Smith's point about the fund balance left over, this is my concern next year when we're back here at this time. We have had a declining student enrollment, and our average daily membership next year may not be what it is this year. We don't want to lose those teaching staff that we may have to pull back on because of our declining enrollment, because this year we're being held harmless. And so I'm suspecting that if we do have the fund balance that we may have, we might need to be using those funds to protect our teachers. And that's just what I'm thinking of in the future. So I have no problem with voting on the CIP budget. If we need to make course adjustments during the year, I'm very open to those suggestions. I say we move ahead with it, and I'll be voting yes.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. Ms. Vecina, I see your hand up, and then Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. I too support a holistic view for our capital improvement plan. I think it's incredibly important. We've invested a great deal of funds already on our educational planning efforts, including the consultant who has brought forward recommendations which we haven't acted on fully. And I think that, as we talked about last week, I think that they should be considered in our capital improvement initiatives. And to that end, there are 3 areas that, I'd like some clarification on, and that is in this, whether it's in this capital improvement plan, in this budget, or the fund balance, we've talked about, and as Dr. Gabriel just mentioned, Maury High School, where that phase 2 piece is going to be included. Is it going to be included in this capital improvement plan? I don't think I've received a response to that, and I don't know if anyone can address that tonight. The second piece is we've talked about school
Just a
name.
moment, Ms. Vecina.
Oh,
Mr. Jenkins, can you answer her question before she moves on?
The capital improvement plan that we recommended to you included money for the planning for the future capital needs. I believe there was either 150,000 or 200,000 for planning. It did not include a provision for for major renovation at our high school. There were specific projects. I don't have them right handy, but that was not one of the schools.
Yes, thank you. I have that transmittal letter which has the projects on it. But my point is really that it was part of our educational planning effort, right? Which was that in 2019, well, prior to that, we began phase 1 of the Maury, the educational specification study, and then we moved into phase 2. And we were in the midst of that work before, I'm not sure. That's what I'm asking for an update on where we are with that.
Dr. Birdsong can comment.
Yeah.
So the phase 2, to my understanding, it has been completed, and the consultant is ready at the board's request to provide an update.
Okay.
In addition to that, the 3rd paragraph of the resolution related to the CIP addresses the concern of being able to provide the board the flexibility needed to make revisions, to decide what it is that we need as we're planning, as we're moving forward with expending funds in the CIP, as we continue again with our educational planning efforts. So that language is specifically in the fourth line of this resolution. It doesn't tie the board to anything. It provides the flexibility that the board is requesting.
Thank you,
Okay.
Dr. Birdsong. Go ahead, Ms. Basine.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Birdsong. I did not realize that phase 2 was completed. So that's helpful. That's very helpful to me because I wanted to make sure that we didn't lose sight of that. And the other piece, so if I'm hearing you correctly, you know, I read that third paragraph and so am I hearing you correctly that when we engage in this educational planning work, if we find that there are recommendations that we want to act on sooner, that we'll be able to do that and shift some of the projects as necessary?
That is specifically why that fourth paragraph, if you want to call it a paragraph, that's why that was included in the resolution to address that specific concern.
Okay.
And again, to provide the board flexibility with being able to determine what the greatest need would be at that time to move forward with.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Basine.
Okay. Yes, because the other two areas that are, you know, we talked about school naming, and I know with the costs of that, you know, so that's another example of, you know, a lot of discussion we've had in the last 6 months. And, you know, we could possibly use funds from that to rename schools if that's what we choose based on the policy and procedures that we've established. We could possibly do that. Am I correct?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's okay. I just want to be sure that we engage in this educational planning work and that we actually see it through to fruition. And so that's where I think over the past few years, we've kind of gotten away from that. And I want to make sure that that investment that we put in educational planning is realized in the work that we do and the budgets that we put forward.
Mhm.
So I appreciate the clarifications. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Basine. And then I have Ms. Smith. Do you still have a comment?
Yes, just want to make clear that everyone understands the fund balance cannot be used for continuing items. It's only for one-time expenses. So
Right.
teachers' salaries and positions would not fall into that category generally.
It wouldn't be wise. You're right.
Right.
Madam Chair, I'd like to call the question.
Okay. It looks like we've exhausted discussion. So Ms. Tanner, go ahead.
Basine,
Aye.
Campson,
Aye.
Clanton,
Aye.
Gabriel,
Aye.
Jordan,
Nay.
Smith,
No.
Martin.
Aye. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Continued excellent discussion. So next, we want to look at our fund balance request appropriation. There's a resolution on that as well. Here we go. Can I get a motion to accept the, let's see, the resolution approving a request to City Council for the reappropriation of 22.5 million in reversion funds to the school board of the City of Norfolk?
Madam Chair, I move to adopt the resolution.
Can I get a second?
Second.
There's the tie between Ms. Campson and Dr. Gabriel on
No,
the second.
give it to Miss give it to Miss Campson.
Okay. Okay, any discussion? Ms. Smith, go ahead.
I have a few items. So on the memo where it says FY21 capital budget for school improvement, 17.7 million, should that be FY21 or should that be FY22?
I'm just
at the very bottom on the memo.
We were requesting this action as a supplement to fiscal 21.
Okay.
I mean, realistically, the money won't actually be spent to 22, but we were separating this from the regular operating budget and the regular operating capital for 22.
Okay, thanks for the clarification because I was thinking the same thing. There's no way we're going to be able to spend.
But I will say I did have a conversation with the budget director at the city So he was thinking that perhaps it would be 22. So I'm just we're a little unclear, but I don't believe that we had planned to spend in advance of 22.
Well, it's fund balance. I would say let's go with 22 because part of what we're discussing in this budget, and it says somewhere here in this memo about the whole educational planning piece of it, taking that into consideration before we spend beyond the 4.8 million. That basically these funds aren't specifically designated for a identified project as we did with the CIP budget for FY22. That this one is more bigger picture that we are asking for being able to use it for improvement initiatives to include new instruction, renovations, deferred maintenance. I'd like to add in there educational planning also. Just FY21 is, yeah.
Go ahead, Dr.
Oh,
Dr. Birdsong.
I was just going to share with Ms. Smith that is a part of the resolution. I do believe we put that in the resolution as well. The piece on the educational planning.
Can you point me to it? Because I didn't see it.
Okay. Maybe in the memo.
And while you're looking for that, can I just move on to the next one?
Please. Thank you.
So I need some clarification on the 22.5 million. What I remember from FY18, when we approved the FY18 fund balance back in 2019, we had like $1.3 million for science and English textbooks. Then we had another roughly $3.1 million for furniture, fixtures, and equipment at the PP&E school, right? So that's like 4.4 million.
You're correct.
And then the FY19 fund balance was 7 point some odd, like 7.1 million dollars, give or take.
Right.
Now the FY20 budget, I'm sorry, fund balance is roughly 10.9 or so, correct? So that's where we get our 22.5. But I thought we spent the 3.1 on the furniture and fixtures for the PP&E school. If we did, should our available fund balance be about 3.1 million less than what we're showing here? Or do we need to, we didn't spend the money for furniture and fixtures, and therefore we need to continue to designate 3.1 for that because that was something that we said we wanted to do back in FY18.
Okay, the 3.1 million for the furniture and fixtures at the 5 schools, that has already been spent.
Okay.
So that was actually covering money that we had already spent, honestly. You said 10.9 million left in the fiscal 2020 budget. That was closer to 15 million. So the 7 million that we had left from fiscal 19 plus around 15 million, give or take, from fiscal 20 is the 22.5 million. There was approximately $1.3 million, I think it was $1,282,000 of textbook funds that is part of the operating appropriation that you approved earlier this evening. That came from that fund balance that was transferred to the textbook fund. I hate to drag you through all the fund lingo.
You're fine.
So that wasn't spent, and it is being put in the 22 budget, the textbook portion. So the 22.5 million is just from fiscal 19 and fiscal 20.
Okay.
Okay. So, and as I look at, and I apologize, as I look at the resolution, as Dr. Birdsong has pointed out, the 17.5 would augment the 22 capital. So that's a little different from the memo. We didn't catch that difference.
So I appreciate that because when we started the discussion a couple of weeks ago, what we saw was the FY20 fund balance was about 10.9.
Initially, I think that was our estimate before we closed the books.
Okay. It makes sense what you're saying now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Birdsong, go ahead.
I wanted to go back and address Ms. Smith's, one of her concerns. So if you look at the sentence right before the final paragraph in the resolution, Ms. Smith, this is this section does speak to the flexibility piece. While it doesn't specifically use the terminology educational planning, it just speaks to the need for the administration along with the school board to develop a more detailed allocation plan for this, which of course, when we had a discussion about it, it would be an outgrowth of our educational planning effort. So while the terminology educational planning it's not specifically stated there, the detailed allocation plan is an outgrowth of educational planning. It's the next to the last whereas or paragraph on the resolution. Yes. That's the piece that provides the flexibility and speaks to our educational planning efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or discussion? Mr. Jordan?
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Just a couple of points of clarity. Mr. Jenkins, can you, I'll say guesstimate of the total fund balance that we have before us, what percentage of it was originally targeted for instruction in the classroom versus what may have been included for operations or physical items?
Mr. Jordan, I would really have to go back and look. I hate to say it's old and cold, but I would really have to go back, and I'd rather not speculate.
Okay.
But
Well,
we can certainly review that and get back with you.
Would you say? I mean, it's fair to say I would guess that we say that about 74% of our budget goes towards instruction, and is that correct? I think.
I beg your pardon. I'm sorry. I'm having difficulty hearing.
I was saying, generally speaking, about 74% of our budgets that we have go towards instructional support.
That you're correct. So I mean, it would stand to reason that much of it is from the instructional area.
All right. So generally speaking, with this fund balance, there's either something with the revenue expenditure piece, or as we talk about often, filling positions. But we start off with a budget year anticipating that we're going to target instructional support and other human resource support to deliver outcomes for children. For whatever reason, we may find out at the end of the year, we didn't do that. And then when we talk about the one-time expenditures, we then, at least in this instance, and I'm sure in instances before, but right now we're then kind of shifting that money that was originally intended for instructional support by and large, and now moving it towards capital investment. Is that a fair generalization?
Well, if I could, I would like to add one other factor, and that is that we also, and I'd have to go back to see exactly what the numbers were, but I believe our revenue estimates were higher than we had made too. So it's that fund balance is a combination of spending less, taking in more revenue. It's a combination of the two. And yes, a lot of the spending would certainly be in instructional categories.
So just a technical question then. So, the 4.8 million recommendation, which I think is outstanding, to me targets investing in human beings to support student outcomes, which I think generally speaking is what that 74% of that instructional budget addresses. Is there something that does not allow us to ask or request that some additional portion of these funds get lumped into the overall budget that the council sends to us for operating? Is there a way for some of this money to go back into the operating pool versus coming out of the operating instructional pool and then specifically being targeted for
I will say the
future investment?
4.8 million that is proposed for the bonus structure that would go to school personnel and some other a few other staff members. That will fall back into the operating budget because that's just where we pay payroll. That is a one-time item, and it's to recognize the extraordinary issues that surrounded the pandemic, which is not a recurring matter. The city council has stated in their policies that these fund balances or these residuals that are left in their budget could only be used for non-recurring purposes. And I think that the philosophy there is to make sure we don't, I guess, undertake certain costs that would recur and that we would need to sustain. So generally, the funds that are being allocated from the fund balance would be spent on items that are not recurring, one-time expenditures, which the bonus structure is structured to address that issue, along with capital improvements or studies, for instance, on what we should do for our specific buildings and that whole educational plan.
I'll ask one more and I'll just yield. Would it be inappropriate then? So in the same way that we are allocating I'll just call it a bonus fund for the 4.8 million, is there anything that would prevent us from saying we wanted to put 3 million in another bonus fund for consideration in the future?
So long as it's a non-recurring type of request, I mean, that's our parameters, that the funds be used to address non-recurring one-time cost. Generally that means capital improvements or deferred maintenance, but it would have to be something that's non-recurring.
So, Mr. Clinton,
and that is according to the city's policy governing our.
Thank you. Mr. Clinton is the maker of the motion, and Dr. Bursa also would invite whatever thoughts you have. In this recommendation that I think still kind of ties the 17.7 million to physical school improvements only, if we were able to say physical school improvements and consideration of future one-time bonus support for full-time contractor personnel and so forth, would that allow for there to be that flexibility going forward that, doesn't tie it all into capital, doesn't tie it all into human resources, but at least provides the administration and the board flexibility should we decide we want to do future bonuses in the upcoming year?
So, we are requesting that 4.8 goes towards one-time bonuses for our staff, and we've identified those staff members, and that's very important. And I hope we're able to move forward with that. Mm-hmm. Again, with the amount of work that needs to be done within our schools, within our facilities, I must continue to advocate that we move towards utilizing that funding somehow to support deferred maintenance, new construction, anything that has to do with improving our facilities for our children. And that's where I am with that, Mr. Jordan.
Yeah, and just so you know, I'm not disagreeing with that. I think, as Mr. Clinton mentioned earlier, I think there's going to be additional federal funds that are going to come down to support additional physical improvements. All I'm saying at this point, as we are going forward with the planning, don't just earmark it for capital only. Give some flexibility so that as the opportunity arises, if we do determine that there's additional one-time compensation and support that we could give to staff or those that are, as you say, on the front lines in the classroom, I'm just suggesting provide that flexibility versus right now at this point in time, just tie it to the capital piece only. And that's what I was trying to get to last week as well. So
Okay, so because I actually had a question that came out of that, because I remember when we saw the applications for the federal CARES funding. I think it was in the one for 50.5 million or something there. I thought I saw a line in there in the grant application that talked about some type of funding that was like a bonus or something in that respect there. But me personally, just and even listening here when we talk about the plan, our facilities need some dire attention. And if we've got the additional fund and revenue, I mean, I tell folks, there's some silver lining in this whole pandemic in the respect that we have, been virtual and we haven't had to expense so many things. So it's giving us another opportunity to repurpose those dollars where we may not necessarily have had that opportunity. I think the administration's already given us $4.8 million that we're going to use for one-time bonuses. I think that several other divisions across the in the 757 and District 2 have done that, have at least given a one-time bonus. Some flexibility. I mean, of course, I think that we've talked about that, about having flexibility in here, but I think that the recommendation, and I still stand fast with, is that the focus still needs to be in this particular category, placing that 17.7 million that's here on necessary projects. And so I won't accept that as a friendly. Of course, Mr. Jordan, if you want to make an amendment, you personally can, but I stand behind on the recommendation.
Okay, I have Ms. Basine and then Ms. Smith.
Thank you. So I wholeheartedly support the 4.8 million for bonuses. All of our school-based staff have been working just tirelessly this past year, and I fully support that. Again, around the capital improvement, you talk about flexibility there, and again, connecting some of the educational planning work that we've done. One consideration that I would like to see is around the proposals that were put forward around our later start times. We've moved back away from that because of funding around funding related to some of the capital improvements that needed to take place in order to make that happen. And so one thing I would like for us to consider is to make that a capital improvement project or initiative that we put back on the table to complete now that we have this opportunity. And as Mr. Clanton just said, I believe Mr. Clanton or Mr. Jordan just said, this pandemic has exposed us to opportunities that we should be taking advantage of and reimagining sort of what our school day structure looks like. And one thing that I think many of our high school students would tell us is that they have been implementing later start times in a lot of ways this past year due to this pandemic, because that is their natural biologic rhythms. And knowing what we know about its impact on academic outcomes, its impact on social and emotional health and safety, that's something that I feel strongly that we have this opportunity to put that back on the table for us to achieve. The third thing is that as we are very much still in a pandemic, I have raised, the issue of providing voluntary COVID-19 screening as a way of trying to catch some asymptomatic infection, being able to assess how well our mitigation strategies are doing, and to provide assurance for our teachers and our families. And yes, I believe CARES money can be used toward that, but we might be able to use some of that toward this fund balance and other grant opportunities to make that happen as well. So those are some.
Ms. Basine, to your second, the COVID screening, did you see the Was it on the website? There's an additional reminder on COVID screening for parents and guardians. Have you seen that? There's
I don't know what
there's a pop-up screen. Dr. Birdsong, do you want to talk more about that, or?
Yeah, it's on the website, but Dr. Martin, I really want to point out that today President Biden actually just earmarked, I think, of this 1.9 trillion earmarked funds to be directed for the local school divisions that'll be coming down for us to do that. So I think that there's something in the works that'll come from the federal level to us. So I don't think we need to take funds away from here. I think they're on the way in this next round.
Right. But by the time that comes to us, we may be toward the end of the school year. So, I think there are opportunities with even this 50 million that we are applying for now, and this fund balance to look at that a little more closely. And I'm asking for flexibility to do that. So.
I'm happy to add the later start time conversation to as a future agenda item. I'm just not sure we're ready to tackle that in this budget right now, considering we're still in the, in a pandemic. We're still just beginning. I mean, just 2 days we've returned some of our children to the classroom. So I really think it's my impression that that'd be very much overextending our long list of things we're trying to accomplish right now. But I'm willing to bring, to add that to agenda planning to see how that could work moving forward. But I'm not, I just really don't think that that's the prudent thing to do, to ask our administration to tackle completely changing start times and end times while we still don't even have everyone in our classrooms yet.
Well, and maybe I should clarify, there are identified projects that came out of that educational planning work. I'm not suggesting that we try to implement later start times right now. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting looking at the capital improvement impacts of implementing later start times that has already been recommended to us. So again, connecting recommendations that we've already received to do towards some of the educational planning initiatives that we have said that we want to do. So that's what I'm asking, not to change start times this year while we're trying to get students back into school. So I just wanted to clarify that point.
Okay, thank you. Let me see. I have Ms. Smith, Mr. Jordan, and then Ms. Campson. And Mr. Clanton, was your hand up?
I'm just at the, it's 9:18. Madam Chair, if I may, it's 9:18. And I just, if I may ask my colleagues, we're not disputing the amount of money that we're going to ask for the city to allow us to come back to us. I think that we're making very good points, but I think that if we could just agree to be able to come back next month and really kind of dice up the numbers, but just to be able to send over that this is what we're asking for. I think that would do, everyone justice for everything that we need to do. We still have folks that are kind of waiting for us and some other items. So I just wanted to offer that, please.
Ms. Smith, you're next on the list. Ms. Smith, I can't hear you. Maybe it's me. Are you on mute?
Yeah, I was.
Okay,
So
go ahead.
to what Mr. Clanton just said, and also in support of what Mr. Jordan said, I recommend that we amend this resolution or adjust it to also include the words and other one-time projects. And that will allow us to be able to come back later and offer up suggestions for other one-time projects that may be a good fit this in FY22 for the utilization of some small portions of the fund balance. Also, we have to connect this memo to the resolution, because the resolution keeps stating FY22, but the capital budget portion of it states FY21. So that what I'm recommending is this FY21 capital budget for school improvement and other one-time costs be added to this. So it gives us that flexibility.
All right, I want to start with your first point. I remember in my economics classes, reappropriated funds is always one-time money.
Right.
Is that correct? So I don't know that we need, I think that's understood in the document that we don't need to say other one-time
Well, I think we do because we're
projects.
specifying CIP in here, so we're already committing it to a specific one-time purpose. If we say that, then it's open to other one-time purposes than CIP, not only CIP, is how I'm looking at it.
So that goes back to whereas the school board, the superintendent, and the administrative leadership team will collaborate on a more detailed allocation plan once reappropriation of the unassigned fund balance is approved by the Norfolk City Council. So that's where that generalization would be. I don't know that we have to say other one-time funds, since these are by definition one-time funds. Or one-time project.
Then why are we specifying then?
Well, I thought that's what you had recommended, was to specify for other one-time.
No, I'm saying we're specifying for CIP, we're specifying for the bonus. We're designating them for a specific purpose.
Right.
And these purposes are one time, but one time is the bigger umbrella, and then we've narrowed it to two types of one-time purposes.
All right, let me propose this. If we insert, so if we say, whereas the school board, the superintendent, and the administrative leadership team will collaborate on a more detailed allocation plan once it, plan as a result of educational planning, once reappropriation of the unused fund balance is approved by the Norfolk City Council.
Say that again.
Whereas the school board, the superintendent, and the administrative leadership team will collaborate on a more detailed allocation plan as a result of education planning, once reappropriation of the unassigned fund balance is approved by the Norfolk City Council. Good?
I think so. One more time.
The wrong paragraph.
Right, okay. Where everyone, if I had one of those bouncing balls, I could go along words. Okay, whereas the school board, the superintendent, and the administrative leadership team will collaborate on a more detailed allocation plan as a result of education planning, once reappropriation of the unused fund balance is approved by the Norfolk City Council.
Okay.
So,
and then,
but Madam Chair, are we done with educational planning? Because that statement to me sounds like once educational planning is done, then we're going to go back. I like the original one because I think it leaves it very broad.
Continued education planning?
I don't think there's any wrong with the current statement. It says once reappropriation of unassigned fund balance is approved by City Council, we're all going to come back and talk about where we're going to put it.
I'm trying to find a middle ground here. Dr. Birdsong, go ahead.
So just to be clear, because the way the intent of this resolution is to address the one-time bonus and capital improvement projects. And I think what I hear Ms. Smith saying is that she would like, or she is proposing that it not only be used for CIP, but for other areas. So you would have to change a lot in this resolution, because again, this resolution was based on
just those two things.
Not
as a result of our follow-up conversations.
Okay.
If I may, Dr. Martin.
Mr. Jordan, go ahead.
I think Ms. Smith was in the right paragraph originally. So where it has the superintendent's recommendation, aforementioned memo, and I'm not sure if we need to include the memo, but if we just had in here that the request is, I think you all changed it to appropriating the $17 million towards physical school improvements. And I had bonuses to staff, but if we use Ms. Smith's language, other one-time or other projects, I think that's the paragraph. If you add the "and" there, then the rest of it still flows fine. So you have
Under physical school improvements and other projects?
yes. So you have the 4.8 million for the bonuses, and then you have flexibility added for the rest of the 17.7 million, which can address physical school improvements or other needs. Then the third paragraph says where you're coming in to work together to address how that 17.7 million would be allocated based upon those further discussions. So you get flexibility in the previous paragraph, and then you get the collaboration around that in the existing paragraph. If that would be.
Is everyone understanding? Can you read how that would, can you please read that for everyone, how it would be amended?
Where it currently says, I would strike much of it, and it would just say, whereas the superintendent's recommendations include allocating 17.7, or if Dr. Birdsong doesn't want that there, it could be the board's recommendation, allocating 17.7 million towards fiscal school improvement. And this is where I'm saying, or other projects. Then leave the rest of it the same, because that rest of it then says that what we would do with physical school improvements or what we would do with other projects would be a result of this collaboration in the following paragraph.
Any opposition?
As the maker of the motion, I don't agree, so there'll need to be an amendment sent to the floor.
If the chair would allow, I'll put it in the form
I'm
of
sorry,
a motion.
I'm not hearing that. Can you repeat that, Mr. Clinton?
Mr. Jordan have to make an official amendment. I don't accept.
Okay. I'd like Dr. Birdsong to speak. She had her hand up. You didn't? Okay. Okay. Ms. Smith?
I have one concern. After we approve these three, we already did two and this one. Does council then approve each one separately? Because I have concern that this fund balance one, especially the discussion regarding CIP and how closely related the dollar amounts are may get confused with this CIP resolution.
It would seem that, I mean, these are similar but separate buckets. So I'm not saying I know what city council does. So I really can't speak to it.
Can someone shed some light?
Because they could decide to do something differently this year.
When we send these up to them, are they then taking each one separately like we did?
These are being proposed as a package, right? They're going to be submitted together. Is that correct? Or no? Yeah, these need to be submitted we're submitting all these by April 1st.
Dr. Martin.
Go ahead.
If I can try my amendment and see if it passes or fails. But I move to amend the resolution in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th paragraph to whereas the recommendations allocating $17.7 million towards physical school improvements or other projects. That would be the amendment to that paragraph.
Any opposition?
No, you see if there's a second.
Okay.
I second that amendment.
Can you repeat that?
I said, I second that amendment.
Can Ms. Tanner just call the question?
On the amendment only.
Mhm.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Tanner.
Aye. Aye.
Nay.
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 Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Madam
Okay.
Chair, can we please call the question on the original
Yes.
motion?
Ms. Tanner, go ahead.
Basine,
Nay.
Campson,
Aye.
Clanton,
Aye.
Gabriel,
Aye.
Jordan,
Nay.
Smith,
No.
Martin.
Aye. Okay, I'd like to propose an amendment to the agenda because we've had some individuals waiting very, very patiently for us over the past 2.5 hours. I would like to, can I get a motion to move items 5.06 and 5.07 up to make 5.06, 5.04, and make 5.07, 5.05?
Madam Chair, I move to amend the agenda to make item 5.06 now 5.04 and item 5.07 to 5.05.
I'll second.
Ms. Tanner, please call the question.
Basine,
Aye.
Campson,
Aye.
Clanton,
Aye.
Gabriel,
Aye.
Jordan,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on to 5.04, we have our legislative update. And with us on via Zoom, we have Ms. Jana Kasabun and Mr. Ron Jordan from, you with us? You still here? Okay, you didn't fall asleep, did you?
Here.
I hope you're not celebrating St. Patrick's Day without us.
No, I usually go to a big party, but they haven't been able to have that for 2 years.
Aw.
So this is the second year. Okay. Thank
Just a
you all
moment.
for-
Ms. Tanner, do you have the slides up?
Can you bring the slides up?
Okay.
Yeah, I actually have to get to that screen as well. Okay. First of all, I want to thank you for letting us fill you in on everything that happened this session. I don't know if you get a chance to look through our lengthy reports every week that we send to you, but Dr. Martin and Vice Chair Jordan, school board members, Dr. Birdsong, and community members, we are still here. So we're going to give you the General Assembly update. We the General Assembly was unlike any other this time. We had the Senate was meeting remotely at the Science Museum in Richmond, and all the House committees and subcommittees were all virtual, as well as the floor sessions. So it was very strange. We all made the best of it, and I think that you'll be really happy with what came out of it. Next slide. The first thing on the on your slate that what we did was, let me explain this first. We organized this presentation in according to your legislative package that you had approved earlier. So what we'll be doing is first giving you the update on those items. And of course, Ron Jordan is his forte is the budget and funding. So we're going to be bouncing back and forth a little bit on that. First, I wanted to tell you about the JLARC review for the true cost of public education. We have put that in for a few years, and we finally got it through this year. Senator Lewis, who represents Norfolk, put it in by our request. And we worked it pretty hard this year, and JLARC actually agreed to do it, not this year, but next year, which means that the report will not be this November, but it will be in the very next year, which is a huge accomplishment considering that one hasn't been done for more than 2 decades. So this is going to be a watershed and really a really important study so that we can look at the current costs of delivering on the SOQs, which we haven't seen for a long time. It has passed the General Assembly, and so JLARC will start. That doesn't need to be signed by the governor. The other thing that you guys have had a couple times in your package, and this year was perfect timing for it, the incentives to create socioeconomically diverse schools and learning environments. Senator Locke out of Hampton had put in a recommendation for cultural competency training, and making cultural competency a part of every evaluation. So they're trying to integrate it into the existing education hierarchy, and really making a push to have that happen this year. Next slide. I'm not seeing it.
It's there.
There we go. Oh, wait a second. I think we skipped one.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, there we are. We also, one of the things that we were looking to do for you this year was to have certain things, put certain things in action to help recruit and retain the best teachers and the instructional staff that you need. So we had $5 million in general funds the second year for incentive payments to attract and retain early childhood education teachers, because we know that that's really, they're hard to find in some preschool classrooms. Also, we had a bill put in that required the Board of Education to grant a 2-year extension of the license of any individual licensed by the board whose license expires this year on June 30th, so that they have additional time to complete the requirements for licensure. The bill has passed both chambers and is on the governor's desk right now. Another one that's on the governor's desk is reading specialists for students, was another thing that you guys were looking for. And they now have reading intervention services for students in K-3 who demonstrate deficiencies in reading based on their performance on the SOL. So that will also be put into action. Next slide.
Okay, I'll pick this up. You all had lottery funding in your package, and the General Assembly responded. They added the lottery proceeds exceeded the revenue estimates, and they added enough money to essentially increase the per pupil payment by $30 per student the first year, and an additional $15 per pupil the second year. With regard, you all had additional at-risk add-on funding. As you may recall, during the special session in the fall, the General Assembly restored most of the at-risk add-on money that had been appropriated in the 2020 session, but had been unallotted due to the pandemic. And so they protected that amount. They didn't add to it in the regular session, but they did protect the amount that had been added in the fall special session. We're going to be talking a lot more about special sessions as we go along. And at the end, I'll bring you up to date on what to expect going forward, because we're looking at another one. Technology-driven learning. There's $7 million in there to continue to expand the virtual learning management system that the DOE operates, and provide additional free course enrollment slots during the upcoming school year. And there's also of interest is $1 million for WHRO to operate the eMedia Virginia, which is the statewide digital content and net online learning system. Go ahead, next one, please. There's money in there too for almost $50 million. There was a bill that John will cover in a minute that modifies the SOQ to require at least 3 specialized student support positions per 1,000 students. And those 3 can be any or a combination of social workers, psychologists, nurses, licensed behavior analysts, a licensed assistant behavior analyst, or other health and behavioral positions. And so 50 million, almost 49.2 million was added in the second year for implementation of that bill. Again, it actually modifies standard 2 in the SOQ to mandate those, to require those. Some divisions have already exceeded those numbers, and so this is money they're able to put in their pocket. Others are not. You, Mr. Jenkins, have to answer that question for you guys. On school counselors, you remember we've been going around on school counselors for the last couple of years. The General Assembly approved $26 million to meet the standard that they passed in the code last year. Essentially, it's 1 full-time counselor for every 325 students in grades K through 12. VPI, there are a lot of items on VPI. They maintain the previously approved increase in the VPI per pupil amount, which goes to $6,959 in FY22. It extends the deadline for the DOE to determine the gap. DOE is looking at determining the gap between the child care market rates and the VPI per pupil amounts to try to adjust the VPI amounts. And they've been given time to do that because COVID has delayed that. It adds language in terms of granting flexibility that says any monies appropriate for VPI payments that are not awarded in the fiscal year can be used to supplement other initiatives under that program. It's intended to maximize use of early childhood programming based on local need. The next item requires DOE to prioritize serving at-risk 4-year-old kids when reallocating the unused VPI funds, such as using the community provider add-on and the at-risk 3-year-old pilot program. And the last item there, the budget also establishes a target inclusion rate for special education student participation in VPI classrooms. Next item. And lastly, in your program, you had asked about state funding for school facilities. The only thing that deals with funding for facilities is language in there directing DOE and the State Department of the Treasury to develop recommendations for enhancing the literary fund's attractiveness as a source of school construction funding. A lot of discussion in the session about school construction funding, but the General Assembly is unwilling at this time to put up money for that. Next slide, please. John.
Okay, I will take over from here. We want to tell you about some legislation that has passed, and there were some things that that we hadn't heard of before. This was one of them. The standards of learning assessments for reading and mathematics grades 3 through 8. They want to measure individual student growth, and by doing that, they wanted to, and they passed, having 3 assessments a year to show student growth and learning. And they'll have one in the beginning, one in the middle, and one at the end of the year. So this is completely different. They put money in the budget for it. The Board of Education will be creating a process for doing this, and we will be monitoring and reporting back to you as they make progress on this, because it's a different thing, and they're going to really have to. There are other states that are doing it, but it will involve a lot of work to get through this. We have some time. They are not planning to do it next year. The next school year, they're adding a beginning of session so they'll only have two. They'll have two exams. They'll have one in the beginning and one at the end. They will be adding the middle of the of class one and the mid-year one the second year. Okay, next slide. Okay, we had this fun bill. In the beginning of the session, there was a bill put in and we really had no idea how it was going to snowball, but it was only one sentence and it just said that all public schools in the Commonwealth would have to offer every student full-time in-person learning. So it would have mandated that every school division in the state offer both virtual and in-person learning to every student, which if they all accepted, there would be no way to do the CDC guidelines for social distancing and such. There were quite a lot of problems with that. So we worked very heavily with the patron, lobbied with our delegation, and we ended up with something that that we all felt that we could work with. It mostly mandates that every division have a policy and a process in a plan so that they can offer that. So I imagine you may have some questions about that. But.
Yeah, I was going to say it's what it really does is you need to plan on being full-time in person in the fall.
Yes.
It requires that you have to offer virtual for parents who request it, but the default is for full-time virtual in the fall.
Yes, but it also expires. We pushed for sunset date because in the beginning they didn't have that.
Right. It's only good for next year. It expires at the end of 22.
It's August 1st, 2022.
Yeah, but but the important point here is it does require full-time in person essentially when the bill's signed, but the interpretation is for the fall.
Yes.
Beginning with the fall, and virtual would be only for parents who so request it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So may I ask a question?
Sure.
So when they're saying full-time, can you put it in layman's terms? So right now we're on a hybrid
990 hours.
990 hours of instruction in the classroom, which is full-time, 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
5 days a week.
Yep.
Okay.
And that is an option. It has to be offered as an option to every student.
Virtual, no, that is the default.
That's the default, right?
Yes, and so, virtual is an option for those who choose it only.
So by law, what they're asking, what this SB 1303 says is that in the fall, we are required to do in-person instruction 5 days a week.
Right.
Yes.
Just so we're all clear, that's what it means to be full time.
That's right. And for those parents who request virtual, you have to provide it, but the default is for 5 days a week for everybody else.
Okay.
And this was strong. This was overwhelming support from both sides of the aisle.
Bipartisan. Mm-hmm. It actually passed unanimously. There's also the lockdown drills have been reduced. The mandatory drills have been reduced from 3 to 2, which is a good thing, I think, for the administrators. And then the other bill that was kind of unusual was for each school to stock inhalers for those who have problems with their breathing, so that they can asthma and such, so that they can have that in each school for emergency administration. And the delayed effective date is January 1st, 2022. So that gives everybody a chance to work on that. Next slide. Okay, Senator Sproul put in a bill that will affect a lot of divisions, because the all municipal elections for city and town council and school board have been moved now from May to November, beginning with elections after January 1st of next year. That has already been signed by the governor. so we can look forward to that in the future. Students with disabilities, there were quite a few special education bills this year. There was a JLARC study that came out for the Board of Education, just looking at special education in the Commonwealth, and it came out with many recommendations, and this bill addressed a lot of them. So you can take a look at that. And the only other one that affect you in your everyday administration is the public schools. Every building now needs to have a carbon monoxide detector. Luckily, it's something that's not very expensive, and they did have a problem in a school, so they decided that that would be the safe way to go. Next slide.
Okay, the rest of it's money, and I'll pick this up. The budget approved also includes money for the hold harmless for basic aid funding based on the ADM. I'm not going to get into the weeds. I think Mr. Jenkins did a good job on that earlier. However, they netted out the amounts that the governor had proposed. You wind up with at the same point, but they netted out increases that are provided in other parts of the budget for the sales tax update, the additional lottery per pupil payments, and several technical updates. There also is pumped an additional $40 million in sales tax revenues in FY21 and another $45 million in FY22. Here's what's going on with the sales tax. You remember that we thought there'd be a shortfall in the sales tax, and in the special session last year, the General Assembly pulled some non-general funds to plug that hole. Over the fall, it turns out that the sales tax collections we weren't going to have that big shortfall. So the General Assembly and the governor backfilled it. They pulled the non-general funds out and put the sales tax revenues back in, because they were expected to actually accrue. What's actually happening in this is sales tax are exceeding the revenue projections. And that's why that revenue projection based on the mid-year forecast, which was done in January, was increased again over what it was originally when it was approved last year. Also, I would tell you that it's expected that the sales tax revenues will continue to exceed the forecast, and these numbers may increase again. And these are monies that are distributed by formula based on the amounts available. So I would forecast that you will see an additional money from sales tax revenues for both when FY21 is closed out and in FY22. The salary increase, let me touch on that in a minute. The General Assembly provided money for a 5% salary increase for SOQ instructional and sports staff beginning in July. However, you must provide at least an average 2% pay increase during the 2022 biennium to access the funds, and the funding is prorated for those who give less than 5%. There is some question about whether or not the General Assembly actually intended to say the word average. I wouldn't be surprised to see a governor's amendment during the veto session to clean that up, but you get the gist of what's intended there. They want to see salary increases. The goal here is to increase salaries in a way that drives up the average, the statewide average. It doesn't do much good to help the divisions in Northern Virginia to drive up the statewide average. You've got to help those in the middle, like in Norfolk Public Schools. And that's why they want to push the 5% hard to increase the state's ranking nationally, actually. Next slide, please. The learning loss funding. Learning loss is a big concern, and there are two tranches of money here that have been earmarked for learning loss, to deal with learning loss. The first is $40 million in the current fiscal year from lottery funds. It equates to $156.54 per pupil, and it's distributed based on federal free lunch participants to address learning loss in divisions. And you'll see down further in that slide what the monies can be or must be used for. There are one-time programs for extending the school year, summer school, tutoring, remediations, or supplemental after-school programs, counseling, student supports, and you'll see there. But that's what those monies have to be used for that. In addition, they also earmarked $30 million in the ESSER funds to provide grants for learning loss, but these grants will be awarded based on criteria that are developed by DOE and after consultation with a stakeholder work group. Next slide, please. Now, based on the information provided by the staff of the General Assembly money committees, here's what they estimate that the distribution to Norfolk Public Schools will be. You can see in the budget that was approved in the regular session last year for FY21, $210.4 million, and for the approved amount, for revised amount just approved is estimated at 212. And then for FY22 to 11.1 was approved last session, and their new amount would be 219.4. Now remember, that also includes an assumption that you will draw down the full 5% amount. In addition, the General Assembly is paying particular attention to the amount of federal dollars going to school divisions. And you're going to hear more from them about that. And so they published a document that shows the estimated relief payments that each school division has gotten. And the House actually used that to offset additional state funding in their version of the budget. It was dropped in the conference committee, but you'll see the number there of the estimate of the total federal funds received to date through ESSER 1, the Corona Relief Fund, and ESSER 2. It totals about $68 million that the division has received. Now, going forward, as you know, President Biden signed the American Rescue Act. Now, there's $130 billion in that for public education that's going to come down the pike. The governor will not have the authority to allocate that money. One of the things that the General Assembly did in the budget is they removed the governor's authority to allocate federal funds, grants received for these purposes. These funds will have to be appropriated by the General Assembly. It's an institutional thing for decades. The governor has had the authority to go ahead administratively and appropriate federal grants that have been received by the state, but they've been intended for things like small grants that agencies receive or money that VDOT might get for road building outside of the normal process. With the amounts we've seen now, the General Assembly has kind of said, hold on, we're the appropriators, not the governor. We'll decide what the priorities are, not the governor. And so the American Rescue Act funds that come to the state will be appropriated by the General Assembly through the budget, most likely, just like they do. And so we'll be looking probably at an amendment to the budget they just passed. And we expect that to be done in a special session. I think we can safely say there will be another special session. There are three things that the General Assembly is going to have to deal with. One is the allocation and appropriation of the American Rescue Act funds. Second is election of judges to the Court of Appeals. The General Assembly expanded the Court of Appeals to 17 judges. They've got to fill those new slots. That'll in turn create vacancies in the circuit courts, which will in turn will create vacancies in the general district courts. So we're going to see musical chairs in judicial elections. And the last item is they've got to deal with the they've got to deal with enact some legislation to deal with the fact that they can't accomplish reapportionment this year because the Census Bureau is not going to have the data available for redrawing district lines until late summer at the earliest. And so they face the possibility of in the House of having elections 3 consecutive years. And there's a precedent for that. In 1980, the General Assembly had its regular 2-year cycle election after reapportionment. The courts then determined the House districts at the time were multi-member districts. The courts in 1981 determined that those were illegal and they had to redraw the districts to be single-member districts. Had another election in the new districts in 81. Then in 82, you had the regular election in the new districts again. So there's a possibility House members will be looking at elections 3 years in a row. That's one of the issues they're going to have to deal with in the special session also. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Casselboon and Mr. Jordan for your presentation.
Can you speak up, Ms. Martin? Can't hear you.
Sorry, let me adjust my headset. Thank you both for presenting the legislative updates. We appreciate all of the work that you're doing in Richmond and to help us help to promote our best interests and our priorities. I'm going to go ahead and open the floor for any questions or comments. Mr. Jordan, go ahead.
Just a couple of things. One, it was good to hear about the legislative priority successes around staffing and students. As you all were going through that, that was many of our priorities, social economically diverse learning environments, teacher support, pre-K. I appreciated that. And then with, I guess maybe just going back to the bill that I think a lot of General Assembly members think is not mandatory, but you described as mandatory. The piece of it that deals with in-person to the greatest extent possible regarding mitigation strategies. Can you just speak to that piece? Because I think it's important for us, as we just spent all this time talking about the funding support, that what I'm hearing is, one, we better be prepared very quickly for what we have to do in August and September. Two, we've already had $68 million, and who knows how many other millions of dollars are going to flow. And to me, all the more reason why it's important that we have a short-term and long-term strategic plan so that we use those resources for student outcomes and effectively and efficiently for any physical resources that may be impacted. But can you speak to that piece about?
Sure. Yeah. Let me kind of
requirement.
Absolutely. Let me read directly from the bill. That's rather than try to characterize it. Let me read directly from the bill. Each school board shall offer in-person instruction to each student enrolled in the local school division in a public elementary and secondary school for at least the minimum number of required instructional hours, and to each student enrolled in local division in a public-based early childhood care and education program for the entirety of the instructional time provided pursuant to such program. And it says, for the purposes of this act, each school board shall adopt, implement, and when appropriate, update specific parameters for the provision of in-person instruction and provide such in-person instruction in a manner in which it adheres to the maximum extent possible to any currently applicable mitigation strategies to reduce COVID that have been adopted or provided by the CDC. Then it says, notwithstanding the provisions of this section, if a local school board determines in collaboration with the local health department and in strict adherence to step 2 from the health department, determine the level of school impact in the Department of Health's interim guidance to school K-12 school reopening, or any similar provision, any successor guidance published by the Department of Health, that the transmission of COVID-19 within a school building is at a high level, the school board may provide fully remote virtual instruction or a combination of in-person instruction and remote virtual instruction to the at-risk groups of students at-risk groups of students indicated in the result of such collaboration, or if needed, the whole student population in the school building. But in each instance, only for as long as it is necessary to address and ameliorate the level of transmission in the school building. That's specific to individual schools.
Thank you. Yep. Important. Thanks.
Then the last thing there, any school board may, for any period during the governor's declaration of emergency, in effect, may provide fully remote virtual instruction to any enrolled student upon request of the student's parent. So yeah, it's pretty strong.
Is that all, Mr. Jordan? Okay. Any other questions or comments for advanced strategies? Mr. Clanton, do you have anything?
Yes, I just want to express my appreciation to both Shauna and Ron. They've done an outstanding job representing and really advocating and being our eyes and ears on the ground. So thanks.
Welcome.
Thank you
for having us.
Yeah, and
Thank
one
you for your
thing
patience.
I would add to you guys, Jonna touched on it. The study that Linwood Lewis got through, the JLARC study, and it's going to be a 2-year study, and they'll, like Jonna said, they'll start it next year. If you look back at the history of the school funding formulas in Virginia, they've all been driven by JLARC studies. The last JLARC study was 20 years ago. And 20 years before that was a JLARC study, which resulted in the LCI. A lot of the current programs that deal with the categorical programs were a result of the study 20 years ago. This is going to be a big deal. And I can tell you that Senator McClellan, when she was in the House, carried the same legislation every year for 5 years. And when she and I sat in the House Rules Committee, and we couldn't get it anywhere. A lot of it is certainly due to the changing control, but even last year, Senator Lewis sat in the Senate Rules Committee, and it was gone in a flash. And he's worked it really hard this year, and I just wanted to recognize him for that effort and let you know that.
Thank you. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your evening. We, again, really appreciate the work you're doing for us.
Take care.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Next on our agenda, we have our governance training timeline discussion with Mr. AJ Cravel and Miss Cindy Ellsberg. Are you all still awake? Sorry. Thank you for your patience as we go through this meeting. Let's see, pull it up. Everyone's had this document, has had a chance to review it. Mr. AJ, would you like to give us an overview, or you or Cindy give us an overview of the document to start us off?
Sure. So this timeline was built from what we heard during the 2-day work session with all of you in February, as well as the emerging themes and such from the conversations that we had with you individually. It was built to allow for the goal and guardrail setting to happen in order that the superintendent would be able to develop her strategic plan, and that the next budget cycle could support the goals and guardrails in the development of that budget, so that the budget that you would be adopting next year at this time would actually be in alignment with those goals and guardrails. And then there's other activities and deliverables that are listed that would help you get student outcomes focused. There are a couple of things that I will point out since being on the meeting tonight. I would suggest that we move the time use evaluation actually to 414 and flip-flop the agenda use and committee use evaluation to 421. I think that'll make more sense.
Okay, so can you repeat that, please?
Sure. Right now for the 14th of April, we have scheduled to do agenda redesign and committee use evaluations.
Right.
And then on the 21st, we have monthly time use evaluation. The board conducts that on the 21st. I just want to flip-flop those two.
Okay, and keep the community engagement piece on the 14th.
Yes. And then the other thing that I heard, I believe just a little bit ago during your legislative planning and our legislative update, is that board elections will actually move from moved to November
From May
now?
to November, yeah.
Right, and so in October, at the end of October, we've marked for a community and candidate workshop. Just to say, I would just say I would continue to go ahead with that and probably add a second one as the filing deadline or filing opening approaches for that November election, because it's my belief that there can never be too much community education and candidate pre-boarding.
I'm
So
sorry,
just wanted to note that.
Can you repeat that change as well?
No, it's not a change. I'm just
okay.
noting it just because there was just, in case you noticed that there was a board candidate workshop on the 30th of October. I'm still recommending leave that. It would be for community and potential candidates. And then later on, beyond the span of the calendar that you have here right now, add another one of the same as the opening for filing for that November election comes about, because community and candidate pre-boarding is an important aspect of what you'll be doing.
Okay. I'm sorry, maybe I'm just not quite sure what so the election would be the first Tuesday in November, second Tuesday, first. What's that?
Yeah, 2022.
I'm sorry, Mr. Clinton, I can't hear you. Okay, I can't hear you. Okay. Any other suggested changes?
Not from this end. So then, are there any questions from anyone there?
Dr. Birdsong?
Yeah, it's just, I need a point of clarification, please. Under strategic planning in August, the deadline or target date of 8/4, superintendent presents strategic objectives, IGs, and implementation timeline. That is exactly what it says. We're not expected to present a strategic plan at that time, but just the objectives around that.
Yes, that is what that is. And then you would be doing your strategic plan and completing that. Some of that work is that strategic planning work will be happening simultaneously. Those are the items that you'll be presenting to the board in order to complete your strategic plan.
Okay, but not the strategic plan itself, just some of the components around the strategic plan, the timeline around the completion of that entire plan.
I'm sorry, say that again.
So what
I just want to make, I'm just trying to get clarification that the strategic plan itself, it's not a product to be produced on August 4th, just components of that, as well as a timeline when the board can expect updates on specific components related to the strategic plan. Like, it's been my experience that a strategic plan takes, and I'm not saying it's this case, but 9 months to a year to engage the community and have a plan around that. So that's why I'm asking for clarification for what the expectation is on the 4th.
So there are two pieces. From our perspective, there are two pieces to strategic planning. The first piece belongs to the board. The second piece belongs to the superintendent. The board decides what, and this timeline is descriptive of the board getting to the point where they have said, this is what will be the priorities for the school system. Then the superintendent determines how. This timeline is just the board's work. This is them determining what, and then they hand that off to you. And then as superintendent, your task then is to develop the implementation approach that you will use over the next 5 years to accomplish the board's priorities. Is that responsive to your inquiry?
I'll address it later. I'm still not really clear.
But coming up with what the priorities are, that is what this timeline is describing. Coming up with how you will accomplish them, that is not a part of this timeline.
Okay, because it takes a longer period of time to do that. I just wanted clarity around that, just to make sure I understood what was written here.
Well, one of the other things to clarify, just taking off of what you said a moment ago, the job of the board in representing the vision and values of the community is to go out to the community to figure out what are our priorities as a community, and then to write that down in the form of goals and guardrails, and then to hand that to the superintendent. At that point, the job of the superintendent is to come up with an implementation plan for how these things will be accomplished over the next 5-year period. The superintendent is generally conferring with customers and staff in the development of the implementation component.
I don't have any.
You good? Okay. Any other hands? Mr. Clanton?
All right, thank you, Dr. Martin. Hey, Cindy and AJ, it's good to see you all virtually again. I just noticed that there were some additional items that were added in here that I wasn't quite aware of. And I'll just jump in the policy redesign. Can we elaborate a little bit more as to what we're anticipating with that?
Sure. So when we talk about board work versus superintendent work, we talk about board work being that which it reserves for itself through the development of the goals and guardrails, and then the monitoring and assurance that the superintendent is achieving toward those goals while honoring the guardrails. So that would be board work. And then anything that the board is legally required to do is also considered board work, and anything else that doesn't fall into those buckets then is by nature superintendent work. So this work, the policy redesign work would be work around aligning what the board currently holds as its own policy work, and determining what of that can be maintained as board work, and then what of that might be turned over to the superintendent as superintendent work.
Okay. And the follow-up with that one was, I noticed I saw in here about the board norms and protocol and the accountability plan, replacing that with, I guess this is a governance manual.
Yeah, so so the recommendation is to adopt a board governance manual that would in part replace the board accountability plan, and then the previous board norms and protocols documents. And then that would be where all of those types of items, the superintendent and board rules and expectations and procedures for enforcement, as well as the other committee use protocols and adopted goals and guardrails would live. Right now you have an accountability plan document that seemingly would be what the goals and guardrails would replace, and then the norms and protocols would also be housed in that. I know that there was a small section on one section on the accountability plan that did have board goals. I don't have it in front of me, so I can't remember what exactly those were, but this would be a comprehensive document to house all of those items.
Great. Dr. Martin, just my last thing here. I'm a visual learner. So for me, I see this is great, but I like to really have an example or examples. And I think that even from my colleagues of what what the kind of the end game looks like. Not getting ahead of the training, but what does an end product look like? And right now, I don't really see that. I'm not saying that that isn't the case, but I'm just asking for myself, because just kind of my viewpoint on things, being able to see an endpoint, looking at what does the vision, goal, and guardrails look like, an example where this has worked for a school division that you all have worked with. And, you know, you don't have to answer that here now, but, you know, if we could get something like that, definitely I've got, you know, you guys' as numbers to be able to talk about it, just to kind of help guide me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
There are examples in the materials that we provided to you. If you pull out the manual, and we'll resend the link after this.
Are you talking about the additional resources and the printout?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. I'll take a look at that one. Thanks, AJ.
I think maybe we're used to getting attachments and so forth, but they're supplying us with links so that it's always being updated. So we're getting most current information as we go through the process. So please do click on those links for more information whenever I send those emails out.
Yeah,
Mr. Jordan, go ahead.
And all of our documents tend to be live documents. So for example, this timeline that you're seeing, you'll notice at the far right column is a status indicator column. If you'll scroll back up, whoever's running the screen. I don't know who's doing the screen share, but if you could scroll back. There you go. Whoa, back down a little bit. There you go. So if you'll notice the far right column is a status indicator. This document will be updated in real time. So anytime you come to this document, whatever the latest that is true will be here. And so, for example, this evening, the board discusses proposed timeline. You'll notice that's on there. And at the end of this evening, it will stop being gray. It will either be blue, green, yellow, or red. And that will be the case throughout the entirety of this process. So you'll always have a way of coming back to figure out what's the next step and are we on track with the things that we as a board said that we were trying to get done.
And just one on that one, I appreciate that, AJ. Just the last thing on this one, I see we have dates. The last thing for many of us is still just trying to figure out what the time commitment may be around those dates. And I don't know if that's what they're getting, you all are doing out of agenda planning, but as soon as we can get those, it just kind of helps, you know, some of us have to really adjust things down there, but at least knowing the dates helps to know that that's coming up, but appreciate it. Thanks.
So I guess to add on to that, so we're looking at our next session being April 14th from noon to 4. We have our workshop or work session. I said noon to 3:45 because we have a work session at 4 p.m. And so it usually goes 2.5 hours. So would that be a typical Wednesday with you all, or what would that look like?
So that I believe that's what we had talked about for that date. It's going to vary some depending on what the actual item is, and as far as how long it will take. There are going to be, you know, when you're drafting goals and guardrails, that is going to be a large time commitment. What we did try to do was use dates that you have already set aside as board dates. That's something that I heard from many of you that you wanted to try to maintain that Wednesdays were a day that were days that were held for board work. So that's often what the target date has been. But there are going to be items that take a couple hours up to the board. Developing goals and guardrails could be, depending on the discussion and review of community input and data, that could be another 2-day work session. So as we go through the calendar, we're going to, you might also note that we're going to be meeting monthly. The board chair, vice chair, board admin, superintendent, and coach will meet monthly to coordinate those activities. So we can try to have a more solid idea month by month of what those upcoming activities are going to be and how long they'll take.
Okay, so at our when we establish that next meeting, then we'll want to try to lay out as much as possible so that we can maybe survey the rest of the board members for their availability and try to come up with something that's more of a, more of a predictable as can be on what to expect for the times for our meetings. Any other questions? Because we're going to be voting on the calendar today.
I have
Dr. Gabriel.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Yes, I have emailed you when I reviewed the timeline some dates that are of conflict for me. The May 5th date, I'll be available after 5, and then the 15th, that's a Saturday, I believe. To pull up my calendar again. Anyways, I marked the May 5th, May 15th, and then October the 30th. Those were definitely the 5th and 15th are strict conflicts, and then the 30th is a possible conflict. Those are the only dates as far as dates go that I had a conflict with. And I do appreciate them looking at Wednesdays to do the training.
And just for clarification, that May 15th date is the date by which your community listening sessions should be complete, just so that you have time. So it's not a day that you would necessarily be meeting. It's just ends the span of time of doing community listening sessions.
Thank you.
And that's something before we leave, I want to talk about a little bit, because we'll be giving some homework prior to our, that will need to be done in the next week or two in order to set up for the 14th of April.
Okay. Ms. Campson?
Okay, sorry, pushed the wrong button. I also mentioned to Dr. Martin that the April 14th is a problem for me. I did not realize that the board meeting had been moved from the first Wednesday to the second Wednesday. And as it turns out, due to spring break, so obviously we can't make the first Wednesday, but it is a problem for me. So I'm trying to work on it. I have a prior commitment, but I would like to make sure that we do get all of the information on these dates. Which ones do we need to be to? How long do they last? So that we're sure that we can be there. We don't want to miss anything. We're all very excited about the training and the guidance through this, but I am already having a big problem with the 14th. So and as I talked to Dr. Martin about it earlier, so she's aware of it, but it is a problem when when dates just come down and they're not solid. So I'm still trying to work it out.
Anyone else? Okay, Cindy, did you want to go ahead? You said you wanted to review some of the items on the timeline.
Well, and this is in regards to the 14th. So I think the board needs to determine whether or not the 14th is going to be a workable date for everyone, because that is going to be when you do your community engagement training, which is what will set you up to be able to go out and do your community listening sessions, which are large part of what needs to happen before you're ready to draft goals and guardrails.
Okay, so Ms. Kimpson, you cannot attend on the 14th, is that correct? Or do you still need to?
Right now I am committed for that day for another activity that I'm involved in the community. And I will try and work on it this week. That's the best I can say. If I can get someone to do my role, my job. And so it is a problem for me.
Is there any other day of that week you'd want to meet?
Well, probably any day, but that day, but I know we can't, Thursday and Friday are out. So, I mean, I don't know how everyone else feels if it moved to, oh, I turned my phone off. The battery was dying. Let me get my own phone
Is this
out.
I
Sorry.
mean, community training probably is pretty standard. Is this something that maybe Ms. Campson can watch after the fact? Or is this something that we all, like, certain aspects of the community training we need to agree upon or participate collectively?
Yeah, it's something that you all need to participate collectively in. That's one of it. It is an actual practice in which all board members will be involved.
I could do Monday or Tuesday of that week. Am I still on? Yes. I could do Monday or Tuesday of that week. I'm not sure everyone else's schedule is. I would really prefer not to miss it because I think I need all the training. It's just turns out to be a really bad day because I have such a big prior commitment.
Okay, where's everyone on Monday or Tuesday?
I'm available on Monday, but not on Tuesday.
Does anyone else have a conflict with Monday?
Monday would be better.
Monday would be better, but Ms. Basine cannot be on Monday.
And Tuesday, I'm not available until after 1 o'clock.
And Dr. Birds or Dr. Gabriel, you're not available on Tuesday. Okay.
What about Thursday or Friday? I'm more likely to be able to clear my commitment. No, oh, yeah, that's right. No Thursday and Friday. Sorry.
So Ms. Campson, can I ask if, just to try to find a compromise here, would you be able to Zoom in for part of it, maybe? Attend as much as you can?
I very well may be able to because I don't have exact times for some of the things that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, if I could do the morning, I'd be better.
Okay.
Tuesday.
Wednesday morning?
If we could do Wednesday morning, I think I might have a better chance of rearranging and making some changes with some switching with some other people. Would that be better for everyone? Since we
Wednesday morning?
What time?
No.
No?
No. I'm just the lucky one that had my particular day.
If y'all would if y'all would allow, I can Zoom in on Friday evening. But I can't be
Ms.
here in
Smith,
person.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Since we originally were supposed to meet on the 7th, could we do this on the 7th?
That's spring break.
No.
We wouldn't have all the personnel here, the
Okay.
staff here for it.
So everybody's gone.
Let
Everybody's
me just see
gone for
what I
spring
can
break?
do. I'll talk to the committee and see. This date was set when it was canceled last year. So
Mhm.
this date's been on my calendar for a year. It's not like a new activity that just came up. So I apologize because
Well,
I know
yeah,
that
I
we all
mean,
need to be
we
there.
weren't doing this when you planned it, I understand. But so that's why I'm trying to come up with a compromise on this
Yeah.
one.
It just happened to be the afternoon that was the worst possible afternoon of the week.
So AJ and Cindy, do you think it would be reasonable to allow a member to Zoom into the meeting? Or is this something that they would definitely need to be present for the whole time?
Is this going to be the format of the meeting still, kind of this hybrid?
We're meeting in person. We're kind of doing hybrid because, I'm sorry?
But you would still, like, you're meeting in person right now, but you're still all
right. What the situation is with our meetings, our formal meetings, is that our room does not have the capacity to bring a lot of people in, based on while complying with CDC guidelines. Yeah. And so that's why we're off to enable live interaction, with community comment and so forth. That's why we're doing this hybrid meeting format.
And I just wanted to understand that everybody would have a Zoom tile, even if you're part of you are in person and
yes,
one of you might not be. I think that'll work.
Okay. So Ms. Campson, look at your schedule and see if you can participate, participate in as much as you can on the 14th.
I'll work out something so that would it be at the 12 to 3:30? Was that what the time was?
12 to 3:45, but then we have our work session at 4.
Yeah, well, I was hopeful I might make that. I'm just not sure of the exact
Mhm.
times. It's just that thing starts coming together, but I'll work on it.
Okay.
I will participate as much as I can because I know how important it is.
Okay.
And so if we could then after this know exactly, then that would certainly help.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you
Okay.
everyone for
Yep.
trying to work something out.
All right. Cindy, did you have anything else?
Yeah, so just to give you a little heads up, and I will send this via email as well, but because the board owns the community engagement and outreach portion, the board will be expected to define who their community is that they're engaging and outreaching to. So each board member will need to make a list of who they want to include in those community listening sessions. And that would need to include the organization or and contact information, and if possible, meeting dates for those organizations. What you'll be doing is engagement, so which we consider board hosted listening opportunities, and then outreach, where you might be going to speak to another organization as part of their agenda. So those would be the community and the organizations that each of you would need to list. And we would want your lists by the 22nd of March. And then after that, what we'll be doing is compiling a master list and having board members actually sign up to take care of those community meetings, both executing them, setting them up, and submitting notes afterwards. And I will submit all of this to you in writing. I am kind of losing my voice, so I apologize. And then after that, the other thing that I'll be asking for information on, we'll be developing a script for you to use. And so we'll want to know from you what you believe should be included in that script. You're going to be doing these listening sessions, having conversations in order to glean what the community's vision and values are so that you can use that in order to write your goals and guardrails. So some help from you on what you believe should be part of that conversation and that we can include in the script. And again, I'll provide more written instruction on this too after I get off of the meeting tonight.
Okay. So you're saying by March 22nd?
By March 22nd, your initial lists. And then after that, there'll be another round where you'll be signing up. And there'll be a deadline for that as well.
So I'm looking at this timeline. It doesn't have a March 22nd on it. It has a March 7th.
This is for homework to be done prior to the 14th, just to set us up for being ready for the 14th for what we need to do then.
Okay, so if you can, send that to us, and then we'll figure out how to compile that information for the 22nd. Ms. Campson?
So Cindy, when you're talking about these, are we looking at groups like pulling together civic leagues and pulling together teacher groups and community partners? Are we looking at pulling together groups of those for our listening? Is that just so I have some ideas we work on the homework?
Sure. Yeah. Yep. So it's any of those types of groups, any of the groups that you believe you would like to engage as owners in your job of owner service for the district to get their vision and values. So it might be teacher groups, neighborhood groups, your school feeder pattern areas,
religious
any
groups,
of those civic groups, religious groups, right?
Okay.
Whoever you think should be part of this conversation, you should list, because whoever you list will be included. Whoever you don't list likely won't.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Did you have anything else, Cindy or AJ?
No, I don't. If there's no more questions.
We good? Okay. Can I get a motion to accept the Council of Great City Schools governance training timeline as amended?
I move, Dr. Martin. I move to accept the Council of Great City Schools timeline for governance training as amended.
Thank you.
Second.
Ms. Campson seconded. Ms. Tanner, please call the question.
Basine,
Aye.
Campson,
Aye.
Clanton,
I'm going to vote aye in principle. Still got questions.
Gabriel,
I'm going to do the same because I still have the conflict with May the 5th. So I'll vote aye, assuming that we'll be able to work it out by the 5th.
okay. Jordan,
Aye.
Smith, Martin.
Aye. Okay, thank you. The ayes have it. We passed. All right, well, thank you again.
Thank you.
And have a good evening.
You too.
Right.
Bye.
Okay, so getting back on course with our agenda for this evening, we have the science textbook adoption. I'm sorry. What's that?
We are certainly prepared to present. We know that we gave you the presentation
Okay.
along with the data. We weren't expecting to present, but we are certainly will if that's the board's will.
Okay, any questions about the science textbook adoption?
I'll put a motion on the floor.
Okay, go ahead.
I move that we adopt the proposed science textbooks as recommended per the superintendent.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, Ms. Tanner, please call the question.
Basine,
Aye.
Campson,
Aye.
Clanton,
Aye.
Gabriel,
Aye.
Jordan,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye. Okay, the ayes have it. The science textbook has been approved. On the next agenda.
Bye.
We have
And that's a Norfolk Public School Board record right there.
Lake Taylor School proposal. Can I get a motion to accept the Lake Taylor School proposal?
I move. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. I move that we accept the proposal for Lake Taylor School as delivered to us in the presentation
Thank you,
last
Ms.
week.
Campson. Can I get a second?
Second.
Mr. Clanton seconded. Any discussion or questions?
I have a question.
Mr. Jordan, go ahead.
Dr. Birdsong, Dr. Gibson, the piece associated with Ingleside, did you all confirm the vote that was taken before that had that option for Ingleside at least through 2022? So this resolution that we have before us includes that opportunity and outreach to the Ingleside attendance zone. Is that correct? Right, but what I shared with you all after the meeting is that the decision of the board at the time was for that to extend through 2022 at least. So I'm trying to determine if, as part of what you have before us, includes the continuance of what the board voted then.
Okay.
Yes, we will
Yes.
give the community that option.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
Call the question.
Oh, go ahead, Ms. Tanner.
Like,
The scene.
With that clarification that was provided, I vote aye.
Campson,
Aye.
Clanton,
Aye.
Gabriel,
Aye.
Jordan,
I had to support it. Want to make sure it's in the minutes. Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye. Go Titans. All right, good. Cha-cha. Change time. All right, on to matters of the board. First up, we have the student representative report or comments. Ms. Simpson, do you have anything for us this evening?
I don't have much to add. I just wanted to once again say thank you to everyone who was involved with this week's first phase back to in-person learning. I've only heard good things from teachers and families and students, which makes me very hopeful and appreciative that everyone's just doing everything they can for this district. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simpson, and your time will come. So, all right, thank you very much for those comments. And next, we have our board committee reports. Do we have any reports from our committees? We got a good one from legislative committee today.
Yeah, only thing policy, we're going to be moving our meeting to April the 2nd, right?
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. All right. Well, with that, I want to thank everyone for your persistence throughout this meeting. It's a little longer than we wanted, but I think there was excellent discussion and good decisions. So with that, I'll say happy St. Patrick's Day, and we are adjourned.